So his intention was to remove the hedge in its entirety, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so
So good morning, everyone. We're going to take our seats, please. We're going to get the meeting started. We have quorum. All right, good morning. Are there any declarations of interest? If there are, please indicate the item and the nature of the interest. Okay, there being none, I will now take a motion to confirm the minutes from October 17th, 2017. Councillor Palacio and Councillor Doucette. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any petitions at this time?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a petition from residents on Northern Avenue with respect to item number 26.26 for submission to the clerk.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to go through the items. First item, EY 26.1, final report, Baby Point Gates Planning Study, 225, 430 Jane Street, 665, 787 to 787 Annette, 494 Armadale Avenue, 143 Evans Avenue, 1 and 2 Harshaw Avenue, and 502 to 504 Willard Avenue official plan amendment. We are holding for speakers. EY 26.2, final report, 35 Tabor Road zoning bylaw amendment application. Hold for speakers. Item 26.3, final report, 418 The Westway zoning bylaw amendment application. Hold for speakers. 26.4, final report, Long Branch neighborhood character guidelines. Hold for speakers. 26.5, refusal report, 3002 to 3014 Islington Avenue official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and plan of subdivision applications. Hold for speakers. 26.6, request for a direction report, 2442, 2454 Bloor Street West, and 1 to 9 Riverview Gardens official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. Hold for speakers. 26.7, request for direction report, 2526 Lakeshore West, zoning bylaw amendment, draft plan of subdivision and site plan control applications. Hold for speakers. Here we go. 26.8, request for direction, 111 Plunkett Road, formerly part of 135 Plunkett Road, zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications.
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mamalidi.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion that just directs staff to work with the applicant and report back in January. This is an application that's at the OMB.
Okay.
Can I just put that up so that you could read it?
Yes, we can. No?
And I'd like staff to just verify that this is okay as well, including the solicitor.
Yeah, hold
Well,
Let's hold it.
let's hold it down. Yeah, we can't see that. Is there some technical difficulties here to show it, or no? Okay, all right, let's carry on. We're holding that down. 26.9, request for direction report, 386, 394, Symington Avenue, 405 Perth Avenue, and 17 Kingsley Avenue, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. Hold for speakers. And 2610, request for direction, 3415 to 3499 Western Road, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, lifting of the holding symbol and site plan control application.
I'm going to hold
Councillor
that.
Mamalidi.
I'm holding that.
Hold. 2611, preliminary report, 25 International Boulevard, zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment to be put up on the screen, amending the community consultation to 240 meters.
All right, as amended by Councillor Ford, all in favor, opposed, carried. 2612, preliminary report, 859, the Queensway zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor DeChano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a motion to double the area for consultation to 240 meters.
As amended by Councilor DeChano, it's on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2613, application to remove a private tree at 28 Gaydon Avenue. Hold for speakers. 2614, the front yard parking appeal, 18 Bayless Avenue. Hold for speakers. 2615, application for fence exemption, 65 Princeton Road. Hold for speakers. And 2616, another fence exemption at 34 Sir Williams Lane. Hold for speakers. 2617, application for fence exemption, 40 Rakeley Court. Hold for speakers. 14 Ladywood, fence exemption. Hold for speakers. Application for fence exemption at 26 Prendon Avenue. That's 2619. Hold for speakers. 26.20, proposed official naming of new park at 60 Eastwood Park Gardens. We'll hold for Councillor Grimes. He doesn't want it held? All right, it was on my list. All right, and then we'll just move staff recommendation? Okay. Oh, all right, so Councillor Palacio will be moving staff recommendations on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
I'd be more than glad to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.21, update report Etobicoke Creek and South Mimico Creek Trails. We're holding this item for Councillor Grimes. 26.
Mr. Chairman, on
Yes.
a point of order, is we have three
Yes,
members of council that they're not present at the moment. Councillor Nunciara, Councillor Grimes, and Councillor Holiday. Now, I believe that there are a number of items. And
Yeah, there are. I have a list of them right here.
okay, so we're
be
holding
held.
them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so 26.4 and 26.7 was time for the afternoon as well, correct? So 26.21 was just held, right? So then we're good. All right, thank you. So the next item is 26.22, proposed sidewalk on Tabor Road. Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully this is a quick item, but happy to hold down if any members have an issue. I do have an amendment. It is a staff recommended sidewalk. I am amending the termination of the sidewalk at the health center instead of connecting it.
Fine,
So I'd like to move that.
that's good. So as amended by Councillor Ford, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.23, right turn on red prohibition, Western Road and Starview Lane. Councillor Mamalini.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to hold that item.
Yeah, I believe there's another counselor that wants to
hold it?
hold it.
26.24, U-turn prohibition, Marine Parade Drive. We're holding. There wasn't a request for a hold here for Councillor Grimes. So we'll move staff recommendations on behalf of Councillor Grimes. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Traffic control signals, Dovercourt Road and Geary Avenue. Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the recommendations from city staff with a huge thank you to the Director of Transportation Service and his staff for doing an excellent job on this one and to listening to the community. Thank you.
All right, as moved by Councillor Palacio, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.26, traffic control signals, Islington Avenue and Norton Avenue. Hold for speakers. 26.27, speed limit amendment to Learmount Drive. Councillor Campbell. As moved by Councillor Campbell, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.28, speed limit reduction, 32nd Street. We're holding this for Councillor Grimes. 26.29, extension of permit parking hours, 15th Street. We're moving staff recommendations for Councillor Grimes. So, Councillor Palacio, could you move on behalf of Councillor Grimes?
I'll be more than glad, Mr. Chair, to move the recommendations from staff.
As moved by Councillor Palacio, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.30, parking regulation amendments, Superior Avenue. Again, another one for Councillor Grimes. Councillor Palacio?
I'll do the same, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.31, installation and removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, Etobicoke York District, October 2017. Councillor Palacio and Doucette.
We will move the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.32, traffic calming poll results, Rustic Road between Heisel Road and Culford Road. Councillor DeGiorgio.
Like to hold, Mr. Chairman.
26.33, traffic calming Prince Edward Drive North between Dundas Street West and Bloor Street West. Hold for speakers. 26.34, appointments to business improvement areas. Councillor Doucette.
Move staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I guess we need a motion to add the new items. Rosemary? Right, so Councillor DeChannel's moving a motion to add the new items. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the new items are 26.36, nominations for appointment. Yeah, sorry, missed one. 26.35, endorsement of events for liquor licensing purposes. Councillor Mamalidi, DeGiorgio, and Palacio.
Please hold that one.
Hold.
I would like to take a look at to see what's there.
Right.
Thank you.
Nominations, 26.36, nominations for appointment to the Board of Management, Swansea Town Hall, Community Center. Councillor Doucette.
I move staff recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Pedestrian crossover request Royal York Road between Hillside Avenue and Simmons Street. Councillor Palacio for Councillor Grimes.
More than glad to move the recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.38, request to reduce the speed limit on Pelham Avenue from Osler Street to Lawton Avenue to 30 kilometers. Councillor Palacio.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 26.39, various encroachments, 2175 Lakeshore Boulevard West. Councillor Palacio for Councillor Grimes.
Move the staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that's all I have? We're good. So then we'll go to our first item. There you go. So our first item on the speakers list is EY 26.13, application to remove a private tree at 28 Gaydon Avenue. And we have one speaker listed, Andrew Manini. Andrew, please come forward and you ready?
Yep.
All right, you have 5 minutes.
All right, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully this works. All right, you're not going to be able to see these pictures. So, spring of 2016, partial tree fell and hit my house. I was inspected by the city. City said to remove the damaged limb. The damaged limb was removed, but the tree extends over 100 centimeters in diameter. It is hollowed out 5 feet deep, starting 6 feet high. Both requesting to remove, the city's declined, fear of the tree falling on both the house and the neighboring properties. So the requesting to remove the tree given the structural integrity of it or lack thereof, and reduce liability to both my property and the neighboring properties as well. Unfortunately, these pictures are not visible, but I don't know if Max Dita is here. He said he would potentially be here and that he had inspected the tree from the city. And if you'd like to provide any comment.
He will in a moment. So is that all you have at this point?
Well, my ask is that I be able to remove the tree and plant trees, obviously to cover the canopy. The risk in not removing this tree is that the tree will fall and then no subsequent trees would be planted. Therefore, I think it's a net gain to both the city and myself as a property owner to remove the tree, reduce the liability, and therefore plant the subsequent tree so that there is something to provide for the city in terms of the canopy moving forward.
All right, thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Councillor Mamalidi?
Yeah, thanks for coming. Your arborist report speaks of a crack in the tree?
Yep.
You
I have
wanna-
I have
wanna-
pictures. You
You
just
want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the limb cracked. You can't see the the pictures aren't that visible, but I can give you the hard copy. So this tree here, it hit that limb's hit the right side of the back of the house. There's a crack in the limb, and where that limb cracked off, there's a 5-foot hole into the center of the tree,
There's a
which
hole-
I've provided pictures and have measured.
There's a hole in the center of the tree?
There's a hole in the center of the tree, extending 5 feet from 6 feet up.
Oh, I see that here.
Wow, I see it here.
All right, so your arborist, are they suggesting to take it down?
The arborist is suggesting to remove the tree.
And what did city staff tell you?
City staff said no, that it is healthy and viable, and that it'll provide benefit in the long run.
With a hole in the tree?
So yeah, so now that that's zoomed in, yeah, I'm not sure city to comment on that, but there's a stick sticking out of that tree. That stick is greater than 5 feet in length. I've inserted it down into the tree, and I'll show you next. So that's the stick in the tree. That is where the limb cracked. And that is both the stick inserted into the tree and the stick being measured, so that you understand that I did fairly provide the length of that stick.
And you're prepared to plant other trees there in its place? You're not saying no to other trees?
I'm not saying no to other trees. I think the city recommended 5. 5 would be extreme for the size of the property. I know the city rules are technically 1 for 1, but I would plant a tree in replacement of this one. Just there's no way 5 would fit on that property. It's impossible.
Would 3 fit on the property?
You could put max 2 in the back. 1 would be on the bordering the hydro pole. So I'm not sure if that would be, because anything, I would put it towards the back of the property so that the tree provided life into the future, and that any risk of it falling in the future would not damage any properties. And in the front, the only place to locate it would be beside a hydro pole, in which case that would pose problems moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Campbell?
No, Councillor Mammoliti asked the questions that, to which there were replies. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Doucette?
Thank you very much. One of the suggestions in the report is to prune the tree. Have you had the tree pruned, except for the removal of this one limb?
The arborist did not want to prune the tree because they were afraid that it would injure the tree and the amount of pruning it needed, which was contradictory to a conversation I had with Mr. Max Dita, in which case he indicated that the tree could be pruned. However, I'd say there's a gray area from a resident reading the guidelines on that to say you could trim a tree, but if you pruned it too much and injured it, well then you'd be fined and have to pay the fine. So,
But are you not, but your arborist, would your arborist not be aware that they can prune up to a certain percentage of a tree? If it's a qualified arborist, they would know how much they can prune and how much they can't prune. Therefore, you wouldn't be
I would
at a
believe
risk of damaging the tree.
I would believe so. I think given the size of the tree, there's a lot more pruning than what's being indicated, and therefore that's why they're indicating that it would potentially kill the tree if we pruned it, to the extent of removing the larger limbs that are extending onto the other properties.
Are you also aware that if City Forestry has recommended 5 trees, you don't have to plant all those trees on your property. You plant as many as is feasible on your property, and the others are covered off by cash in lieu of a tree? And are you aware then that that fund goes into your ward, and you can the forestry can use that money to plant other trees within your boundaries?
I'm quite aware of that, and I also understand that 5 is extreme. I think, given being a resident and that this tree is a danger, I'd like to be able to meet somewhere in between the middle of 1 and 5. But I appreciate you pointing out the fact that not all 5 need to be pointed.
You don't have to plant 5 on your property. Thank you.
Any other questions? I got a couple. So how far is this tree? And there's some photos in the report.
Yeah.
Don't be concerned about those not being clear. I'm wondering how far is the tree from the house?
6 meters from the back shed, which is attached to the house, and 9 meters from the structure of the house itself.
All right,
I
so,
believe is what's indicated.
and
also
how
in
long
the
have
report.
you lived in the
I've
house?
lived in that house for 1 year. I had tenants in it previously to that, and previously to that, or prior to that, it was a family-owned home.
Okay. And this incident with the branch happened the one time or other?
It
incidents?
happened the one time and hit both the house and the shed. So it had structurally hit two pieces.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions of staff?
Yes, please. I have questions of staff.
All right. Who's here from staff? I don't see Max. Oh, I do see Max. There he is. Sorry, Max. Okay, if you can come up, please. All right.
So you're recommending against the removal of the tree
Yes, correct.
with the hole in it?
Yes,
You believe the tree is sound and it's not going to fall?
it's a lot of standing all around, and we don't have a diagram measurements exactly to say that how much is it, but compared to our assessment and other trees, two arborists have seen the tree in different occasions. I have seen the tree when you denied the request to remove it 3 months ago, and I've seen the tree last week as well.
And you
So
have an
the tree is
arborist,
maintainable.
you have another professional arborist saying take it down.
Can you repeat again, please?
You have another professional arborist
Yes,
suggesting that it's not safe. to
correct.
take
The
it down.
arborist hired by the property owner is proposing to remove that tree.
So if it falls, are you prepared to take the responsibility?
That's why it's an appeal process going to city council, and if that, God forbid, and that happen, then the applicant has a right to, to claim it, and then legal services
Not what
deal
I'm
with it.
asking.
So
City
that's
staff-
how
city-
that works.
City staff are saying no to taking it down. There's a hole in the tree. A professional arborist is saying take it down. It's contrary to what you're saying. Are you prepared to take the responsibility if this tree falls down?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is not my position as a city staff. My recommendation is there in writing, following the process and the policy. It's not something that we are against the arborist or the property owner. We look at the tree and the tree bylaw, and we recommend it. Now it's up to community council and city council to make a decision. Say yes.
So we're here listening to city staff saying keep it up with a hole in it. Another arborist is saying it's dangerous, take it down with a hole in it. And it's up to us to decide on whether it's safe or not.
That's through you, Mr. Chair. That's how the bylaw is approved. The city staff, general manager makes a recommendation to the community council and city council, and there is an option there. And if the city council decide to approve it, then it's a decision from city council.
Why are you saying it's safe with the hole in it the way it is?
Well, because the hole is not in that degree that it compromises the structure of the tree in our assessment. We have a tree assessment done by our staff. And the second, I discussed with the owner, the guy, and he is very, trying to cooperate. And I said, you're right, you're property owner, you're providing information, whatever, how much you can. But how many trees we have in the city of Toronto with the holes and a cavity and decay, and they're still standing? That tree, just for the discussion was a storm at the beginning of September. Nothing happened. Was a branch happening in 2016? That happened. The owner dealt with it, removed the branch. Tree looks healthy and maintainable. If you want to look at the
So
picture,
there was a
I can
limb
provide.
there was a limb that broke off. Was that healthy?
2016.
Was that healthy, that limb?
I don't know, to be honest, because the different staff, different section visited the site in that time because there was a call from the neighbor. So inspector visited the site and issued an order to remove that felled limb on the house.
Okay, so you understand that we're faced with a situation where there's a big hole in the tree. A limb has already fallen on the house. An arborist is saying take it down because it's not safe, but the city officials are saying keep it up because it is safe.
Yeah, that's our decision, our proposal.
All right, and what is the appeal procedure that exists to date
Appeal procedure?
for the homeowner?
I'll show you what is in the bylaw. Just give me a second.
No, the reason I'm asking is because there are people listening to this
Yeah,
and they don't know the bylaw, right?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, you may want to describe it. We can't really see it.
This is under 81322, appeals where the general manager refuses to issue a permit, an applicant may within 14 days of the date of refusal appeal to the appropriate committee council by submitting a written request to the general manager that the permit application be heard by the appropriate committee council.
Okay, that's
B,
that's
B.
the only part of the appeal here. Is there another part to the appeal?
Sure. Where an applicant has filed an appeal, the general manager shall prepare the arborist report and forward to the committee council. Prior to the general manager reporting to committee council, the city clerk shall notify the owner. And upon consideration of the application, the appropriate committee council shall make a recommendation to the council. Upon consideration of the application, council may direct the general manager to issue a permit subject to condition satisfactory to the council.
So there is no other part to this appeal. This is a political decision at this point.
Correct.
So the politicians have two different opinions.
Last question.
Is there anything else that we could do to
No,
satisfy?
Councillor, that was it.
Well, that was it?
Yes. You're over 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
All right.
Thank you. I think it was Councillor DeChannel first, and then Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I should ask the applicant this question, but Mr. Deed, I'll try and ask you. Your report doesn't actually reference this large empty cavity inside the tree. So I'm wondering, I guess now, when the main branch fell, is that what exposed this large hole, or is that in a different section of the tree? Do you know?
It's in the same section, but the reason that why it's not in the report is because there was not in the arborist report. That was provided by the applicant, the owner, last week. So a report was done 2 months ago. That's why the hole that he mentioned to me and repeated today said that was last week.
So you were not aware of that large cavity when you made the report?
We were aware, but we did not interpret that, refute that, because it was not in arborist report.
Okay.
Mentioned by the arborist.
So in your report, it does talk about how where the limb came off,
Yeah.
the tree does its thing, and it's starting to close that area up, heal itself. But where that large cavity entrance is does the tree not, I mean, with the weather and the rain and animals and all that, is that not risk of inducing rotting from the inside out now that there's a large open cavity?
Could be, but we're talking now for specified time frame, which our assessment structurally and botanically is for 2 years. So we look at the tree, very experienced arborist, look at the tree, assess the health condition of the tree structurally, and comes healthy, botanically comes healthy. So that is the picture that show you a little bit of that branch that fell down, if you can see.
Right.
That is pruned by the owner, and everything is safe there, there's nothing wrong. You have another picture here showing the entire tree. It's a big tree, it's a huge tree.
It's beautiful.
And no other trees in that side. All the rest of the trees have been removed by the property owner, but they were less than 30 centimeter diameter. We got a calls in that time, but trees were less than 30, were not qualified to be protected under tree bylaw. So it's no violation of the tree bylaw for that part.
Okay, so given that the tree has this large cavity, in your opinion, it won't reduce the lifespan of the tree in any way?
Will reduce somehow, but the problem that we're recommending the owner is to reduce the crown, prune the tree. And I had a conversation last week, I believe it was Friday or Thursday, with the property owner, that if they're willing to reduce that, the tree will be there for sure 5 to 10 years. But the problem is the tree is just wild. They never pruned the tree when the tree was young to have a good form and good size.
Right.
Because they just leave the tree grow itself, right?
Right.
Now, after that limb fell, they just removed the failed limb to make the site safe. There's nothing wrong with that. But they did not prune the rest of the tree at all. And you can see from the picture. Now, if they cut it back, reduce the crown, tree will be, that is our assessment from our arborists.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the age of the tree?
It's hard to say, but it will be about 78 years old, I believe.
About 78 years old. And you say if he trims the tree, it'll give it another 5 to 10 years only?
Absolutely, maybe more.
So then the tree, okay, so why did the branch fall?
There's a different reason. Maybe the wind in that time, we don't know. Even healthy, very healthy trees can fall down, the branches.
Right, okay.
Because those storms and the, the speed and the wind and how kilometer that is and what direction that is. And that tree, is it somewhere in the environment that the wind can, trees are like, are living organisms. They all the time, they can fell branches if they don't prune properly. That's happened.
Do we know the approximate size of the limb that fell?
I think it was 30 centimeter diameter, something
30
like
centimeters?
that. Yeah.
That's a pretty big, that's a big honking
But it was
branch.
6 meter, as the owner said, from the shed,
Right.
and about 9 meters from the house. That's why only top of the limb fell on the house.
So it's interesting you say, you talk about the importance of pruning, but in a forest, trees don't get pruned. So why is it necessary to prune trees?
But there is no house in the forest to fell down. They fell in the ground, we leave them there.
Yeah, okay.
That's the difference.
What caused the hole in the tree? There's this big hole.
I think the limb that fell down, because it was open, cracked there, that's why the hole comes from.
That's where the hole's, that's
Yeah.
where it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And will that hole get bigger?
I don't think so. You see colors there, the tree is working around, so I don't think it's going inside the trunk of the tree. That's our assessment for now. And the trees do that all the time.
Okay. How
They
high
colors
up,
the wound, and then the decay cannot go inside the tree.
how high up from the ground is the hole?
Is that 1.6, maybe 1.8 meter?
That's it, okay.
Around 2 meters.
So you visited this site how long ago?
2 times. Last one was last week, because I want to make sure the tree is viable. I'll come into committee council,
So
so
you
I
just-
prefer to have a look,
you-
another look.
You just saw it, okay.
Yeah, last week. It was Thursday maybe, or Wednesday, but last week.
If the tree is not pruned, you said if it's pruned, it'll get another 5, 10 years, maybe longer. So what would be the outcome of the tree if it's not pruned? How will death ensue?
It's hard to predict that. Maybe it could be fallen branches there in the neighbor's rear yard, but I'm not sure. The branches looks healthy now and maintainable, but you never know. The reason we're suggesting to prune is because all the trees needs pruning every 2 or 3 years, normally. Then another reason is because one limb fell on the other side towards the house, so if they prune that, they balance the crown as well. That is going to help the tree.
How much would it cost to prune the tree?
That is expensive. It's a big tree. To be honest, that is expensive, yes.
Do you have an estimate? Is it
I
$500,
don't have, to be honest. We
$1,200?
don't deal with the
No?
tree maintenance, but maybe $1,500 or maybe more. But I'm not sure for that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a private.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Doucette.
I'm actually fine. The other 3 councillors asked all my questions, so I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have just one, maybe 2 questions, Max, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
sure.
So I just heard from the questions that Councillor Campbell asked that it sounds like you're saying that the tree probably is in decline, given that you're only giving it maybe, in your opinion, it may only have a 5 or 10 year lifespan left. Does that mean then that it's likely in decline?
No, we're not saying the tree is in decline. Our opinion, the tree is maintainable. But if they don't prune at all, our assessment, says that 5 to 10 years that tree is viable to maintain. But tree is not in decline. Only the complaint is about the cracks, that is because of the branch fell down on the house. Only that part they're complaining.
No. So the concern is, and I know Councillor Mamalidi asked this question as well, and Councillor Campbell about the hole itself. We just can't predict the behavior of a tree, and you said you don't really know how that even happened. So what's the likelihood of that maybe just getting much worse, and then the tree cracks and falls down? Do you have any opinion on that?
I do. When we did the tree assessment, then the likelihood of failure is possible. Likelihood of impacting the target is low, and consequence of failure is significant. So if you go to that assessment by International Society of Arboriculture, tree comes healthy.
Okay.
So that's, we take in consideration likelihood of failure. It's not improbable, it's not imminent, it's not probable, but it's possible. And we're saying that likelihood of impacting the target is low in our assessment because it's in the rear yard and occasional, very, very occasionally used. And the consequence of failure is significant because it's the house there, and we take that in consideration in
Right.
our assessment, and the tree comes healthy. So,
So in that situation, and some of the concerns that you've heard, would it not be wise to err on the side of safety on this? And since the applicant is more than willing to replace it with a number of other trees that will last another 100 years.
I understand the owner and the applicant. He wants to make the site safe, which normally is good, is his responsibility to do that. The problem that we're having is that keeping the tree or removing the tree should be a balance all the time. If we see a risk to that tree to fall down, we never stop, issue the permit according to 813-18A. Trees in poor condition cannot be maintained in health and safe condition. But if staff assess the tree is healthy and maintainable, then we advise the owner what he should do. We are willing to check the tree next year or year after if really something happened to the tree. Let's say, tree declines or, the health condition go worse, we can do that. And we did that for a couple of applications that come to community council too. We said, next year, give me a call. If you see something wrong to the tree, we do that. You don't have to apply for a permit. You don't have to spend more money. We try to cooperate with them. And he has been very cooperative, to be honest, to try to solve the problem.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go to speakers. Speakers?
Yeah.
Councillor Mamalidi?
Well, leave it to Ward 7 for these kinds of issues to come up to community council. This, I think, is one of the first that I've heard of where there's a gapping hole in the middle of the tree and our staff are suggesting to keep it up. And I don't want to challenge the staff on this at all, but do look at the arborist that my constituent has hired, which very clearly has a completely different opinion than the city's opinion. Now, what I'm afraid of is that the same old thing's going to happen here, where a political decision is made based on this, and we've got two different opinions, completely different. This is going to go to council, and the political opinion is going to be to keep the tree the way it is, without knowing the facts and without knowing the circumstances. That's what's going to happen here. I don't want that to happen. I'm going to move that we defer this, so an on-site meeting take place with the city's arborist and the constituents arborist with me there. And I'd like to hear it on both ends of the equation from the experts. And you'll be surprised that maybe there's a common denominator here that will make everybody happy. That's what I'd like to do. I say to my constituent, if you do it any other way, the politicians that love to hug the trees are going to vote in favor of this staff report. It's not going to help you. On the other end of the equation, I want to explore an option for the owner to be able to prune the tree without having to worry that if something were to happen to the tree, they would get fined at a later date. And I'd like to explore that, because that seems to be one of the biggest issues that his arborist has, is that I can trim the tree as the city wants me to, but if the tree dies sooner than later, they're going to be charged the value of that tree. So if I can explore that to see if any liability be taken away from the homeowner or the tree owner in this particular case, then I'd do that. So allow me the flexibility to go back into the community with all parties. Maybe there's something that can come out of it. And who knows? Maybe the city arborists, now that they know that the hole is there, might have a completely different opinion. They may want to inspect it thoroughly and might come back to you and say, yeah, you know what, I agree with the other arborists. So I want to be there to listen to the conversation.
Thank you. So we have a motion to defer. Any questions of the deferral motion before we carry on? No. So then let's vote on the deferral motion. All in favor? No? Oh, speakers to defer a motion, thank you. Any speakers to defer a motion? Yes, Councillor Doucette, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'll be supporting this deferral motion. I believe that it doesn't hurt to revisit a tree. If the decision is, though, to prune this tree, which I truly think will make this tree safe, I hope the owner does take that advice and prune it. I will just point out that the owner's arborist report does say, and they usually do if we read these arborist report, you know, this is at the wish of the owner. So I appreciate arborists are registered and they have to do their job, but every report does say at the wish of the owner. I wish I wouldn't put that in there. They really shouldn't. It should be a true report on what the tree is. We've heard this tree is 70, 80 years old. Therefore, I think we should try everything possible to save it. Even planting 5 trees, whether in your garden or in the city property. You're not going to replace a 70, 80-year-old linden tree which does so much for your property, for your family, for everyone around you. It's impossible to replace. So I would like to see this deferral. I'd like to see everything possible done to, 1, make this tree safe. That's priority. But 2, try and save this gorgeous tree. So, Councillor, I'm supporting your deferral.
Well, that's good, thank you. Any other speakers? There being none, then we'll vote on the motion that's on the screen as amended by Councillor Mamalidi. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, so next item is 26.26, traffic controls, Islington Avenue and Norton Avenue. We have one speaker listed, Milos Milicic. If there are any other speakers, please advise the clerk, and we'll add you on. Milos, feel free to come up now, and thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Honorable members of Community Council, my name is Milos Milicic and I reside at 31 Northern Avenue. I'm standing before you today to express my support for installing traffic lights at intersection of Northern and Islington. This intersection is hazardous, it's not fail-safe, and it's not risk-free, and it makes it very dangerous indeed. For the public good, welfare, and safety, I urge the city to install traffic control signals at this intersection. There are a number of reasons why this decision will be beneficial to the community, and I will list some of the key ones. I've observed and used this intersection daily as a pedestrian, as a driver, and as a cyclist. It is one where a wrong split-second decision can lead to major accidents or worse. I've noticed instances involving children running across the street. I've seen elderly folks with likely reduced vision and hearing crossing with canes in their hands. These folks are at an enormous risk, and they may be just trying to get to the bus stop and get to their doctor's appointment. Closest alternate crossing is some 300 meters away, which is tough as we have 80 and 90-year-olds living on the street. On days when it's minus 30 degrees outside, it's even more difficult for them. These are the individuals that have built these communities before us, and we owe them a duty of care. I drive through this intersection daily to take my daughter to school, and it's, believe me, very tough. This part of Islington has a somewhat unique traffic flow and distinctly peculiar pattern from the feeder streets. Highway is just south of it, and this has significant effects on the intersection. It takes a long time to get your turn to cross Islington, and you must exhibit extraordinary patience. Nevertheless, you still take a risk with every turn as you cross multiple lanes of traffic. I occasionally try to ride my bicycle to work, and from a cyclist perspective, I can tell you it's hard staying safe in the city on designated bike paths, let alone on a marked intersection such as this one. New and large communities just being built north of the intersection, it will increase the density and levels of traffic hazard would rise exponentially. City stats show there have been no reported accidents or collisions over the last 3 years, but that does not mean that none occurred. And one is one too many, as it can involve a child or an elderly. I plead with you today, let us not wait for a fatality to start an act on this. I'm surprised to see 0 accidents, to be honest. I am also aware there are materiality thresholds or willingness to report an accident, and you also depend on other organizations to provide that data to you. Whatever the case may be, I can confirm standing before you here today that I have personally seen accidents at this intersection over the last 2 years, complete with tow trucks, smashed windows, and glass over the road. I've recently reviewed 2 staff reports, one with respect to traffic control signals at Jutland and Kipling, and one we are discussing today on Islington and Northern. There are many similarities between these intersections. Both Kipling, as you can see on the map, and Islington are defined as major arterial roads. Both Jutland and Northern have speed limits of 50 kilometers an hour. Both relied on stop signs to connect to these main roads. There are some differences as well. Islington, Northern, and Atoll form a four-legged intersection, while Kipling and Jutland is only a three-legged one. Area profile is different as well. Jutland is mostly occupied by businesses, while Northern and Atoll are strictly residential, but they do include a church and a school in the immediate vicinity of this intersection. According to one of the staff reports that I've read, installing traffic control signals will provide safe and convenient access for vehicles and pedestrians. Earlier this year, new traffic control signals were indeed approved and installed at Kipling and Jutland, and from the community standpoint, there's no reason why the same would not be granted at Islington and Northern. Looking at the map of this area and where the location of these lights are, the decision to grant one but not the other would be very confusing, to say the least. To that extent, I have also observed that staff report issued by Transportation Department is contradictory in tone, and in one instance, as noted earlier, suggests citizens are to use the next available set of lights, which are 250 or 350 meters away, while the one just installed at Jutland is a mere 100 meters away from a long-established traffic lights at North Queen on a three-legged intersection. I urge you, the honorable members of this council, to make this decision considering all the information you have at your disposal and not just one generic report which cannot possibly cover every angle that you have to consider here. I believe in you and I trust you will make the decision objectively and responsibly. And this should without a doubt include listening to voices of concerned citizens, many of whom I represent today. I urge you to vote in favor of approving this request, knowing that you're taking a very positive step and a very serious step in ensuring everybody's safety. Reality is this area is changing and we see it and feel it daily for us that live here. There are many new and upcoming developments and these need to be considered in totality when making these types of decisions. New businesses are popping up and reshaping the landscape, such as a very busy Tim Hortons on Jutland and Kipling, so are the new residential projects, such as hundreds of new townhomes on Islington just north of Northern. We have to take note of that and we have to be realistic when it comes to traffic control in these growing areas. Making sure people get their morning coffee on time is never more important than getting our kids to school safely. You have an opportunity here to drive real change that will positively impact over 1,000 households in the immediate area. I trust
Could
make
you
the
wind
right
up,
decision.
please?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions of the deputy, Councillor Campbell.
So you've tried to cross this in the morning?
Yes, every morning,
Every
including
morning.
right now.
How long do you have to wait to cross?
If you get really lucky, about a minute and a half, but mostly it's about 4 or 5 minutes. My wife, for example, when she takes her daughter to school, she doesn't even take the street, although it's right there. She goes all the way around just to play it safe.
So there's a traffic light just 250, if people feel unsafe, just 250 meters to the north. You feel that's too far?
I do in some of these cases, yes.
Is there a sidewalk in Islington there?
Yes, there is.
So there's a sidewalk. Okay, there's a sidewalk. People could walk up to Jutland, use that traffic light?
Yes, of course they can.
Yeah. Okay. And
there's also a sidewalk at Kipling and Jutland, just to mention, as well as Islington and
right.
Jutland.
Yeah, but I mean, this is for Norden and Athol, right? So,
yes.
Right. So it takes about a minute. You have to wait about a minute and a half.
No, I said on a very, very good day.
Okay.
I'd say the average is much longer
Well,
than
it
that.
depends. Obviously, between 8 and 9, it's going to be you might have to wait longer, and in the middle of the day, it would probably be shorter. Would you agree?
Yes, of course. Rush hours are always the worst. That's why we're here.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Chano?
Yeah, thank you, Milos, for your accurate presentation on what it's like living on either Athol or Norden. Just to confirm, you technically can't get to, if you live in one of these communities on the west side of Islington and you're trying to exit from Norden, you can't actually, if you're in a car, you can't actually get to Jutland going around. Is that correct? You cannot.
No, you would have to actually come down to Varnica, go to Kipling, and go up where the Tim Hortons is at
Right.
the newly installed lights, and then drive back to Jutland.
Right.
And on a bicycle, it's even worse. And I would never drive a bicycle on a sidewalk. So, I mean, if you live west of Islington, technically, although we have infrastructure in Royal York and there's the Goodman Trail at the bottom,
Yep.
it's really hard to ride your bike into the downtown.
Right. And and as you said, the TTC stop in order to get people from that part of the street or that part of the community to the subway is on the east side of Islington. So you're essentially jaywalking 4 lanes of almost highway.
I am not going to confirm that, but I've seen many bastards drive past me.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I got a couple. So it's looking at the map in our report. Norden, or Jutland Avenue is not accessible to vehicles from the community on the east side, is correct?
Sir, can you repeat that?
So Jutland Road, that intersection, so if any vehicles want a sort of a safe passage onto Islington Avenue, they have to drive down to Norden in order to, you're recommending traffic lights there, right?
Yes, actually, Norden is there's a stretch of green belt between Jutland and Norden, so the area is kind of detached. So if you're between Kipling and Islington, north of the Queensway, in that community, you either have to try and make a left on Islington or go to Kipling and then go up to Jutland and then come back. So we're kind of cut off. We can't get to
No,
Jutland.
right, so I'm saying if you live on Yorkview, you either make a left on Yorkview to Islington, and there are no traffic lights there, or if there were traffic lights on Norden, that will make for safer passage, because you'd have to drive, then the Yorkview residents or Edgecroft residents could come down to Athol, is it Athol Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah, and then go to those traffic lights to make their left turn.
Yes, that would be correct. So they would,
Is that
they would
correct?
have an extra
Because you
traffic.
can't, the point is, you can't do it up on Jutland, because it's a three-way.
Yeah.
Right. How long have the lights on Jutland been up there?
Years. Sorry, Jutland and Islington?
Yes.
They have been there for years.
Long time.
Yeah, a long time, yes. The only new installation is on Jutland and Kipling. If you see the two stars in my map, I'm not sure if you've if you have this map. I did create it late last night, but that has been, I believe, installed in September of this year. And
All
it's a three-legged intersection. It's got sidewalks, and then there's a bus stop on North Queen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Questions of staff? Councilor Channel? Councilor Campbell, you go first. And
Questions of staff?
Georgia,
Hello,
you
Mark.
have a question?
I'm up? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
So what's the, I presume you did car counts for Athol and Norden at rush hour?
That's correct.
How many cars are turning on to Islington from each of those roads?
I don't have that data available with me.
So I do notice the report seems a little thin on detail. So it talks about the minimum vehicular volume warrant, 37% compliance, and it has to be 100 compliance. What is the warrant? What is the minimum vehicular volume that warrants it? I'm looking at page 2 of the report, 37% compliance. Minimum vehicular volume warrant, 37% compliance. So I want to know what is the warrant?
Basically, it's an 8-hour study, and you would have to have, I believe it's 900 vehicles total liquor volume an hour.
900 per hour.
Yep. So it's 900 for the first part. It would be 900 for the total liquor volume.
Okay, would it be possible to get the data to know the number of cars that are approaching from Athol and approaching from Norden? You usually get this sort of information with stop sign requests. I'm surprised we don't get it for a traffic light.
We can get that data, yeah.
And then delay to cross traffic warrant. What is the delay to cross? What is the time? What does that mean?
That includes vehicles turning, going through and turning left out of the side streets,
Okay.
and pedestrians crossing.
And what is the timing? What is the time of the delay? How long is the delay that's being measured?
The delay is not it's not timed.
Oh.
It's basically it's a volume.
So what does it mean when it's 40% compliance delay to cross traffic warrant? What does that mean?
Well, met 40% of the warrant. So in this case here, I believe you have to have 120 vehicles
120.
an hour.
You have to have 120 vehicles, okay, and only 40%. So really only, like 40 cars are experiencing a delay. Okay. All right, and in terms of collision hazard, there's not a lot of reported collisions.
If you look on page 3 of the report, there's been 2 collisions.
Okay.
And to warrant traffic signals, you would need an average of 5 per year over a 3-year period.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Councillor DiGiorgio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question relates to, I understand there are TTC bus stops on both the north and south side of Norden and Athol Avenue.
That's correct.
So I have great difficulty when we have bus stops along a major arterial road, and I'm concerned how do pedestrians walk across Islington?
You would have to wait for a suitable gap in traffic.
On a major arterial road. I mean, I'm thinking of major arterial roads in my area, and I'm wondering, gee, the flow of traffic is quite, I guess they have to wait until the lineup of cars is such that there's congestion.
Well, that's correct, or when the lights downstream or upstream have turned and there's a gap in traffic.
Okay, is there any consideration given to the fact that maybe people would avoid that intersection simply because of safety issues? And so then we don't have, if we don't have a record of, you know, accidents or collisions in that area, it's because people tend to stay away from that area.
That's a possibility.
Possibility. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Luciano.
Yeah, thank you. So just once again, the report makes no, doesn't take the bus stop into consideration with respect to the safety of pedestrians crossing. It's purely a measurement of the vehicles in the area?
That's correct. In the collisions, yep.
Right. And we need lots of chances for collisions, not just 2 in the last 3 years before we warrant something.
It would be
2 are not enough.
That's right. It'd be an average of 5 that would be considered preventable by the installation of traffic control signals.
Do you know if there was any injuries in those accidents?
I'm not aware.
Not aware. Does the report look at the additional intensification of the area in the future, creating further delays for those trying to exit these 2 large communities?
Actually, we doubled the volume of traffic in the warrants, and it still did not meet the warrants.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions to staff? Sure, go ahead, Councillor Kemp.
Has staff considered or attempted to change the timing of the lights at the Queensway or at Jutland so as to enable a break in the traffic, so where there's just no traffic at that point in time? Has that been looked at, signal timing?
Well, signal timing has been looked at on Islington in terms of coordination.
Well, no, okay, so I'm going to ask it again. So has signal timing been looked at so that there's enough of a stop at Jutland and enough of a stop at the Queensway so that there would be a break for pedestrians to be able to cross somewhere mid-block? Has that been looked at?
I'm not aware of that. Just the
But
coordination study.
That's something that could be done, because usually a coordination study is to enable the flow of cars northbound or southbound.
That's correct.
But to enable pedestrians to cross, that sort of signal timing has not been looked at.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No further questions, thank you. Councillor Channel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion, if we can put it up on the screen, and it's that the Etobicoke York Community Council delete the recommendation contained in the report, October 5th, 2017, from the Director of Transportation Services, Etobicoke York District, and recommend instead that City Council approve the installation of traffic control signals at the intersection of Islington Avenue and Norden Avenue, Athol Avenue. And this comments to my colleagues. This is not a decision that I make lightly. I don't think I've ever asked for a stop intersection light to be installed in the community. And I understand that we have policies, and I understand that we have warrants that we try and implement to see if there is some kind, just to gauge whether something is needed or not. But that is a very one-dimensional way of looking at things, and I understand why we do it, and we need to do that. But take that aside and visit these communities in the morning and in the afternoon, And, and it's dangerous. There's no doubt about it that there is a very big delay in the mornings getting out of these communities. If there was a light there, more people would not take all these side streets and create more additional traffic in the other residential streets to go all the way around. And then we have a safety issue. We have, we as a city are trying to get people out of cars, trying to get them to go to our transit system, and we're not making it safe for people to connect to the transit system here from a very large community. And I can tell you that this part of the Queensway, there are still substantial amount of homeowners that are now seniors. And I know as a fact, they all paid, think how long they've lived there. They paid for their homes $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. They're trying to get to doctor's visits, or trying to visit other family, and they can't get to the bus stop because it's 4 lanes of busy traffic. And it's going to get busier and busier and busier. So again, it's not something I take lightly, but aside from the warrants, just go out there and visit the area. Go there in the morning and take a look how frustrating it is to leave these communities in a safe way. And imagine that this is going to get better, not worse. So for that reason, I'd like support on this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Campbell.
Well, I just want to, I find the report very light in information. This is to the Director of Transportation Services. I don't feel that there's enough data here to make a reasonable determination of whether there is or there isn't a traffic light. I would have liked to have known the number of cars approaching Islington from Athol and approaching from Norden at rush hour. I would like to know the number of cars attempting to turn left to go north on Islington, or south from Athol to go south. The number of cars trying to make that, the length of the delay. Was the queue 5 cars, 10 cars? That's the sort of information I need to know. The percentage compliance there doesn't, I'm happy to vote against something that doesn't meet the warrants, but I need to understand really what the warrants are and have better data. I'm not going to support Councillor DiCiano's recommendation, because I also think that staff probably could have recommended or taken measures to improve the signal timing, or change the signal timing at both Jutland and the Queensway so as to enable breaks in the traffic. And I have a very similar situation in my own ward between Rathburn and Dundas. It's a really long stretch of roadway. There's a TTC stop on other side of the road, mid-block. You have to wait. And that's why I asked the question of the deputy, how long do you have to wait? He said, well, a minute and a half. And well, that's nothing, because I went out one day, and in my part of Islington Avenue, you have to wait 5, 6, 7 minutes to get across, which isn't really, very satisfactory in the morning. So I think other measures could have been looked at, and in order to enable those crossings. I'm not really happy with the lack of information in the staff report, but that being said, I'm not going to support the installation of traffic lights because I don't have enough information to do so.
Any other speakers? All right, no other speakers. We have a motion from Councillor DiCiano. If we could put it back on the screen. Recommending approval of the installation of the traffic lights. And it's coming up in a moment. There it is. Okay. All in favor of the item as amended by Councillor DiCiano? All right. Opposed?
I don't think that's going to be close.
Opposed. That's a tight vote. Passed. Thank you. All right. So on to the next item. Final report, that's 26.1, final report, Baby Point Gates Planning Study, 225 to 430 Jane Street, and 665, 787 Annette Street, 494 Armandale Avenue, 143 Evans, and 1 and 2 Harshaw Avenue, and 502 to 504 Willard Avenue, official plan amendment. Any speakers on this item? There are none listed here. No speakers? Who's this? Councillor Doucette, it's yours. Yeah.
So I have no questions. I was going to speak. Anyone want to speak, or should I just go ahead?
Go ahead, it's yours.
So I'll be moving staff recommendation with a very quick thank you to the committee who walked Jane and Annette on a bitterly cold Saturday morning. I really appreciate all the work they've done. I want to thank Phil Carvalino, our planner, who also walked on the very cold day and worked very well with our community to come up with this report. Just very quickly, the reason it's here, we have a BIA in this area, and their concern was that when some of the non-conforming properties were being sold, it was reverting to residential. A BIA obviously wants retail. It wasn't happening. So this is why the report's in front of us. I think it's a good report, and therefore I support it fully. And obviously no one's here to speak against it. The BIA does support it, and on that note, I will finish.
They're held up in traffic.
Thank you, and you're moving staff recommendations?
I am moving staff recommendations, yes.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, 26.2, final report, 35 Tabor Road, zoning bylaw amendment. Again, this call for speakers. Any speakers for 35 Tabor Road, 26.2? There being no speakers, Councillor Ford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to be very short and sweet, move staff recommendations. At the public consultation, there was only one person who came out. This particular business has been going through minor variances for 15 years, and we just want to move ahead and make it permanent so we can move forward. Okay, thank you.
Can you put a motion?
So as moved by Councillor Ford, staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, 26.3, final report, 418, the Westway zoning bylaw amendment application. And we have two speakers listed. I believe, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, first speaker is Bhavanam Than Mahindran. Please come forward, sir. And you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the neighborhood, I am here. I have a letter here. We have been visiting the houses individually in the neighborhood for the last couple of months, and in the immediate neighborhood, I was able to collect some signatures which support to oppose the change of law. So the letter says, we strongly condemn and oppose any move to change the existing bylaw. We request the concerned officials to safeguard the neighborhood. Please allow us to live peacefully in the neighborhood. Thank you. Yours sincerely, residents of the neighborhood. I have nearly 15 signatures collected here. In addition to that, I would like to submit our concerns here. Again, on behalf of the people in the neighborhood, I would like to bring the following facts to your kind notice. The application for changing the bylaw was submitted by the seller. The seller is leaving the area. We are the residents of the area. Our concerns are genuine, considering the seller's business plan. To my understanding, there was a note at the particular address stating that the place has been sold conditionally. I am not sure. The seller, I believe, has sold the property in the pretext of he will change the bylaw. So we believe, as the residents, we are highly concerned. We believe business interest has been taken priority over the residents' genuine concerns. Second point, amending the bylaw would eventually give permission to serve liquor at the above business place. This will seriously affect the normal life in the neighborhood. This will result in drug use and make the residential neighborhood into a stranger's rendezvous on the long run. Third point, any business that runs after office hours, that is after 6 p.m., would negatively influence the residents in the neighborhood. Children will not be able to concentrate on their studies, and adults and elders will be interrupted in their quiet time. Fourth point, any new business will result in increased traffic in the neighborhood. This will negatively impact the traffic and cause unnecessary delays. I would like to mention that 2 TTC routes are involved in this intersection. Parkfield Junior School is in the close proximity. There are many other schools in the vicinity as well. Increased traffic will result in accidents and even deaths. Sixth point, parking will be a problem, causing traffic congestion and unwanted parking in streets and in the nearby areas. Seventh point, only a quiet business or bank, etc., is ideal for the location. Eighth point, as such, we humbly request you to consider our concerns seriously and stop changing the bylaw. Please use your good office to advocate for the people. And at last, if the residents' genuine concerns are neglected, we would be compelled to seek assistance from print, electronic media, and social media. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of the Deputy and Councillor Campbell?
So, are you aware, do you know what the permitted uses there are for right now?
I believe it is for business purposes, office-like purposes, and a gas station.
It's either a gas station or a bank. That's it. Do you know that, are you aware that there are no other applications to develop the site? None whatsoever?
Yes,
Right.
maybe.
So, and I mean, across the road is the Martin Way Plaza. And is there drug dealing and drinking going on at the Martin Way Plaza?
At times, we used to smell. We don't know what exactly is that. But in the future, we are living with our children and elders. So we don't want to put the place into a...
Would you like this site just to remain vacant indefinitely?
I
Or would you
believe
rather see a gas station there?
we will go, if a gas station is coming in place, then the residents, spoke to a number of residents in the area.
Do you think a gas station would create traffic?
Gas station will not be ideal solution for this.
No. So a gas station would not be an ideal solution?
Yes.
Right. And would a bank be an ideal solution?
Definitely.
A bank is. But, you know, the bank is closing because there's no business there. So the bank determined that you can't make any money out of that location. So you're aware that what the city's trying to do is to enable a better use for the site, but you're opposed to a different use for the site.
We don't oppose any business places occupying the property, so that can run in the office hours. All we oppose is by changing the bylaw, eventually maybe the first buyer will be functioning. If it goes into a loss, he will simply close the business and move. And eventually it will give rise to unwanted businesses taking place over the place.
Would you support a medical building there?
Definitely, if it runs within the office hours.
Okay, so you would support a medical building there now. Do you know that the bylaw prohibits a medical building now?
I understand.
Right,
Yes.
okay. Would you support like a fast food or some sort of food, a restaurant? Would you support a restaurant on the site?
It's my personal view that business I mean, office-like structures, bank, something like that, medical office.
Right.
Such as business establishments can run, so they can finish off by 6 p.m.
But I just was asking about, would you support a restaurant at the site?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Joe Kennedy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I understand what the last gentleman was saying about not wanting to support something like a restaurant. Having lived in the area for over a decade, I would have to say I would be really concerned about noise levels, especially after 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. And we've had a number of occasions where noise levels in our area have been enough to have police come in to sort things out. Noise level in the area has been an issue in the past, and I would be concerned about what kind of business would be in there, if it would be loud and if it would be late. The other question was, is there actually a business planning to go in there? No? Or is it just the lawyers are buying the property to flip it to someone else?
I'll ask the questions when I get an opportunity to ask.
Okay. Is the bank machine going to be staying? That's another question. And if there's a change to the bylaws, is there anything in the bylaws that says it has to be quiet after 6 or 7 p.m.? Is there anything that says, I know that there was a list of things to add on to bank and gas station, but there's a number of those that don't suggest that they would necessarily be closed during the evening. Is that correct?
No,
It's not a question and answer. You have to just state your...
Okay.
Carry on. Your
I would be-
counselor will answer your questions after.
Okay, I would be quite open to having businesses in the area that would be quiet after a certain time. Concerned about the traffic flow and just the noise level and the traffic flow, basically, is the two.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've got a question. So
Excuse me, come on. We have questions for you.
Okay.
All right, Councillor Campbell? You too?
So just a quick question. You've lived in the neighborhood for 10 years?
Over 10 years, yes.
So are you aware that, more than 10 years ago, there was a gas station there?
Yep.
At that site. And you're aware that gas stations can be open 24 hours a day?
But they're not loud.
Gas stations can be open till 11 or 12 or
They're
1?
not loud. They
Well,
don't disturb people's sleep.
They're not loud. They're not loud.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right.
Noise
So-
and traffic are the two things.
Are you aware that that by freeing up the bylaw, did you have a look at the staff report that talks about possible uses on the site, such as a nursery, a fire hall, library, medical office, some retail, veterinary hospital, medical center? Did you see that those are some of the possible uses that would be enabled by freeing up the bylaw?
No, I
Okay.
heard the list, but it went past too fast for me to actually
Okay, all right.
write it
I'll
down.
be happy to talk to you afterwards about it.
Okay.
That's all my questions.
Councillor Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Kennedy. So I've heard a community concern about noise after 7, 8 o'clock. What would concern you? What type of noise are you trying to kind of push back against and the community's opposed to? Like some examples of what you wouldn't want to see in that location.
If there was a business that had an outdoor patio, that had music going until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I would be very opposed to that. Okay, a restaurant, if it's indoors and it's quiet. But how do you ensure that this restaurant is not going to have an outdoor patio with speakers going? Okay. If you don't put it into the bylaws.
Right.
Does that make my point clear?
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Doucette?
Hi, good morning. I'm
Hi.
just looking, I apologize, I'm not familiar with this intersection, so I'm looking at it on Google Street. You have a mall across the way from this,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And there's a Shoppers Drug Mart there.
there is.
And they're
It's open until 10.
Exactly. There, I was just looking at the sign.
Mm.
Looking at the other side of things, don't you think it's good to have some eyes and ears on the street in the evening hours rather than having an absolutely isolated, quiet area? I mean,
Definitely.
so when someone's walking, it's nice to have other people around when you're walking rather than walking in a dark intersection.
Sure. And
Yeah.
for that, we have the Pizza Nova that's
I-
open quite late.
Okay.
The Tim Hortons is open till 1.
Okay.
There's other businesses in the area that are not closed at 6.
Okay, good.
Understand that, but they're not loud.
Right. Following on Councillor Ford's questioning, are you aware that if a restaurant opened, if they wanted a patio, that comes to us here. They are allowed no amplification out on their patio. They have to shut the patio down at certain hours. So all those things, if that happened, could be controlled by your local councillor and the councillors here, just to reassure you.
Awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next speaker, Adrian Letavaski. Adrian? Is Adrian here? Oh, okay. Thank you, Adrian. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name, as you mentioned, is Adrian Letavsky. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And just, first of all, of course, am making myself available to answer any questions which you may have. And also appreciate the opportunity to respond to some of the concerns that we've heard here today. Just simply for reference, gives you an overview of the property there. Hopefully you can see that okay. And as mentioned, this is a vacant site which was formerly occupied by a TD Bank branch, which has in fact been closed for approximately 2 years or so. And at the end of the day, the whole purpose of this application is to allow TD to market the property. As mentioned, the branch is closed. There's no intent to reopen it. And the idea is to see how the property might be marketed. But of course, a hurdle to that is the restrictive nature of the existing zoning, which limits it to either a gas station or a financial institution. I should note that, in fact, this property is zoned local commercial today. And that zoning has been in place, well, for at least 50 or 60 years as part of the original zoning. It was in 1961 that a site-specific bylaw was passed when a gas station was proposed on the site, and it limited it to that particular use at that time. Then in 1994, when TD came along, there was another site-specific bylaw which simply added the bank use to the previous 1961 restriction. But all that time, the CL zone has been in place underneath. And so the proposal today is to simply remove those site-specific limits and allow the underlying local commercial zone to come forward and the full range of uses. And as I've heard mentioned here today, there's no specific proposal on the table right now. It's simply to allow the property to be marketed. And when and if a proposal does indeed come forward, if there's any kind of change proposed on the site, which in all likelihood there would have to be if there was a new use or a new user coming forward. There would be a full planning process at that time, whether it be for site plan permissions, site plan review, which allows the city the opportunity at that time to investigate screening and any other use to ensure compatibility. But I don't think at the end of the day the issue is one about land use compatibility, because as mentioned, this is a retail location, and the CL zone has been in place for many, many years. And it's ultimately the same kind of broad CL permission that has been allowed throughout the city in other similar situations right next to existing residential. I have heard the neighbors' concerns. If I may suggest, I respectfully believe that in part I think they're driven by perhaps a misunderstanding of how the planning system works and what zoning is and can do and what it can't do, and versus the other powers the city has to control such concerns, whether it be noise, which can indeed be regulated through the city's own noise bylaws, and the city has tools in that regard. They will be in place here. And zoning ultimately is just really about an underlying use permission. It complies with the official plan. This is a apartment neighborhood designation in the official plan, which indeed allows such small-scale retail as proposed here. And there's no question there. And we are grateful for staff support, and you have their report in front of you. So I just want to see if I think I've touched on all the aspects there, and of course I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
Hi there. So you've been representing the TD Bank on this file for how long?
It's well over a year.
Has the TD tried to market the site to other financial institutions?
It's been on the market for some time.
It's on the market now.
It's on the market now. I heard one comment before that there was a thought that it might have been sold conditionally. Just as a matter of fact, I can say that there was no such sale in place. Interest has been expressed, but it never reached that point.
Have other financial institutions expressed an interest in the site?
No.
Have owners of gas stations expressed an interest in the site?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. The expression of interest that you had, what was the nature of that? Can you tell me that?
Well, I would just say people made inquiries. That's what I'm aware of. I don't know the specifics of it.
All right. And the branch has been closed for how long?
About 2 years.
About 2 years. Why did they close the branch?
They operate branches throughout the city. Ultimately, this branch didn't meet their requirements to keep it open.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Doucette?
Just one thing you didn't touch on. One of the residents was talking about the ATM. Would you consider, if his property is sold, would you consider working with the new owner to make sure there's an ATM in the neighborhood still, if necessary?
I can certainly make a note of that for TD to consider. There is the ATM that's there today. Ultimately, at the end of it all, if the permissions that we are seeking are put in place, whether it's the ATM or any other new use, it would still have to comply with whatever the zoning requirements are. And so if the ATM is there, we'd have to play by the rules.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions of staff? Yes? Sure. Okay. Questions of staff? Councillor Campbell.
So can you, there's a, good morning, Francis.
Thanks.
On page 5, there's a list of permitted uses that talk about ambulance depot, community center, education use, financial. I'm not going to read the whole list. Recreation use, public utility, place of worship. Talks about retail, pet services. Are there possibilities beyond this list, or is this an exclusive list of what might be there?
This is an exclusive list of what might be there, and I must point out the fact that the permissions that were granted is similar to the lands located to the southeast corner, where the Shoppers Drug Mart is, and again, they're consistent with the permissions currently in place for the apartment building located on the northwest corner. So again, from a land use standpoint, we're looking at compatibility and consistency, And so the list here is essentially consistent with the official plan policies in place.
So this, basically what this would do is this changes the permitted uses to be similar or the same as the Martin Way Plaza, which is right across the road.
Similar.
Right, okay. If this was purchased by, you know, a restaurant, you know, a company such as that, would we be able to place restrictions on the restaurant? Or what sort of controls would we be able to place to protect neighborhood, you know, interests?
It depends on the scale of the use. If the scale what they're proposing is bigger than the existing building, and they'll probably have to go through another planning approval process, be it a site plan or a committee of adjustment process. Well, it's a public process. We still have an opportunity to review it and put in place certain controls. With respect to the noise, the city currently has the noise control bylaws that can regulate, you know, that concern if it comes up.
Has the city been approached by prospective buyers of the site?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Okay, that's all my questions.
Any other questions? Yes. Councilor Giorgio?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm having some difficulty understanding how or why there's an amendment required to the new zoning bylaw of 569/2013. What is it that is being done on this site that requires an amendment to the new bylaw?
So under 569/2013, there's an exception 207. That exception references you to the base zoning bylaw, which restricts the use to the two uses, the financial institution and the gas station. So in order to make this happen, we need to remove or repeal, or what you call repeal that exception 207. So it's essentially a technical exercise.
They were looking to rezone the property to local commercial residential.
No, it says local commercial. There's no residential here.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Okay, so I'll move the staff recommendations. This is a site that I think there's a bit of a fear of the unknown on what might happen here, and yet the city does have bylaws in place to protect against you know, unwelcome entrance into the neighborhood, shall we say. The site has been, you know, dormant for 2 years. I don't think we want it to be dormant indefinitely. It's not a healthy sign of a neighborhood. The plaza across the road is healthy. The plaza is a very well-used plaza with a Tim Hortons and a Shoppers Drug Mart. There's a variety store. There used to be a restaurant there. I think there are places to get food at the plaza now, but this is really just you know, trying to free up the site so that somebody can come in, maybe put in a medical building, maybe put in a dental office, maybe put in some you know, some regular business offices. I don't know if paramedic services would want this site, this particular site, or Toronto Fire, but right now the site is totally encumbered by the restrictions. You know, people aren't going to be building gas stations anymore, so I don't think the gas, I mean, we're going to have electric cars for crying out loud, and we're going to not even have people driving them, so, you know, I mean, the gas station business, you know, it's time limited. And as far as banking is concerned, the reason the TD got out of it is because they couldn't make any money. So unless we unencumber the site's just going to remain dormant, and the weeds are going to start coming up through the cracks, and then it's really going to look derelict. So I think it's important that the city take responsible measures to free up the site, and so that's my position on it. I'm going to, you know, move the staff recommendations, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. And so as moved by Councilor Campbell, moving staff recommendations, all in favor, opposed, carried. Before we go to the next item, we'll just do a quick, so earlier we had, I believe it was item number 8 for Councilor Mamalidi that wasn't legible. It wasn't legible on the screen. So now we have a legible version, and it's just a referral, so if we can do that quickly right now.
Yeah, and I just want to kick it by the solicitor and the planning department, and they're both okay with it as is.
All right, and it will appear on the screen sometime today. Oh, there it is. All right, so this is a referral. Moved by Councilor Mamalidi.
This is number 8. What it is an OMB hearing. It allows for more discussion and a report to come back in January. So this just keeps the dialogue going.
Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councilor Palacio?
If I may, I held an item, EY 26.35, and I'd like to release this item. It has to do with endorsement of events for liquor license purposes, and I want to thank the clerk for providing me with additional information. So I'm okay with that.
What item was this, sorry?
26.35.
35.
It pertains to Ward 7, 12, and 17.
So you're moving that item?
Yes.
All right. All in
Thank you.
favor, as moved by Councilor Palacio. Opposed? No. No. We've got, we got to get to 26.5. We'll do that after. Next item is 26.5. Refusal report 3002 to 3014 Islington Avenue, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and plan of subdivision applications. We have some speakers listed here. First speaker is Grant Evers. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Grant. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to address council this morning. I'm here to support the position of staff on this refusal report. I'd like to give you a little bit of background. Again, my name is Grant Evers. I serve as Vice President of the Humber Summit Residents Association. There are about 75 currently paid members, most of whom live right around the vicinity of the development. The Residents Association is registered with the City of Toronto and incorporated under the Province of Ontario. I would like to outline the origin of the Residents Association just briefly because I think it has some bearing on this particular issue here. We're concerned that Councillor is attempting to see this proceed even though there is a refusal report against it. The reason why we got involved here in the beginning was that we had some concerns about how the actual land was purchased initially, because the councillor's former executive assistant was involved in purchasing, negotiating the sale of a portion of the property, 3002 Islington. See, it's a block of land, 3002 to 3014. 3002 was owned by the city, and the councillor's former executive assistant was involved in negotiating the sale. So that raised some red flags. Then there was an opportunity to have an advisory committee set up after the statutory meeting.
Point of order. Excuse me, sir. So
Yes.
if you can keep your deputation to the item at hand, I think what you just said was just out of order.
Actually, I wish it was. I respect your decision on that, but unfortunately, it has some bearing on what transpires.
All right.
Eventually, there was an advisory committee set up by the councillor, and we were concerned that where this was headed. And in fact, the councillor decided to send out a robocall message telling us not to, members of the community, not to attend a meeting. Well, people didn't listen. 200 attended our meeting because they were concerned about this particular proposal. We fear that the robocall was a manipulative attempt to shut down any meaningful critique or dissent. A resident association was formed. Input for the association was rejected 2 more times when we tried to speak to the issue, speak to the committee. We've closely followed the application throughout the entire review process. The Residents Association has submitted evaluations to the City Planning Department and met with planners to express our concerns and offer suggestions. We thank the Planning Department and Transportation Departments for providing an avenue of communication which was shut out to us. Our bottom line is that we want to see what's best for the community of Humber Summit. The developers have presented a revised plan. They've done a lot of work at great expense. We don't underestimate that. However, after careful consideration, the City Planning Department has said that notwithstanding improvements, The current design has too many features that do not meet the standards set out in the official plan, the provincial policy statement, and infill guidelines for townhouses. That's a pretty damning indictment of the application. Councilor Mammoliti is asking you to ignore the professional's opinion and say to hell with them. The premise that 60 townhouses are less than 136, which was the original proposal, that everything must be exactly fine, I think there's some question about that. We strongly urge councillors today to reject this motion and propose that the developer amend the site plan so that the concerns of the City of Toronto's planners and the Humberston residents are addressed. The motion should not be approved when the proposal clearly is contrary to provincial and City of Toronto planning and development policies. You are asked today to employ your best judgment. Your decision will impact our community for years to come. We trust that the Etobicoke York Council will heed the sound advice of city staff and refuse the development application and recommend further amendment to it.
If you could wind up, sir.
I stand for any questions that you may have.
All right, we do have questions. Councilor
Yes.
Mammoliti, you're up first.
Yes.
Mr. Evers, thanks for coming down. You represent the organization has 75 members?
75 paid-up members, yes.
And how many people typically live in that pocket of the community?
Oh, probably a few hundred?
2,000?
A few hundred. Oh, no, a few hundred. Live right, I'm talking right around the community, right around the development.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's about 2,000 people or so?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, maybe 2,000, okay.
All right.
In the wider community.
All right, so you're here representing 75 of those people.
I'm representing the 75, yes.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you were concerned that there was an advisory committee set up.
Yes.
You recall the public planning meeting that took place?
Yeah, very well,
The
yes, I
initial
do.
one? It would have been April the 18th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
April, yes, it was.
Through the planners, we offered an opportunity for people to sign themselves up as an advisory committee to the application.
That is correct.
Did you put your name on that list, sir?
You did on that evening of the 18th. I did not do that on the 18th. And another gentleman offered his services, and you refused him because you said you didn't have enough. Oh, we don't have enough room for you. And when when you were pressed at a meeting that you called, you said, if anybody else wishes to become a member of the group, please phone my office and email, which I did. And then about a week later, I got a very kindly written response that said,
I will share all the language with my colleagues. But
Yes.
you did not sign yourself up for that particular.
for the initial,
Was
yes.
your secretary treasurer part of that particular group?
Secretary?
Secretary, yes.
Yes, she was. She did sign up.
You had
yes.
a representative there.
Well, she signed up, yes.
Okay, just want to clarify.
Yes.
All right. You recall that there were a number of public meetings that had taken place with respect to all of this?
Yes, there were.
And what was the vote at the last meeting with the 60 units, sir?
Vote.
The vote, yeah. What was
There was no vote.
What was the outcome of the vote?
A vote. There was no vote of any significance or consequence that would stand the scrutiny of the courts.
So the last public hearing that the planning department attended, there was no vote?
Well, I don't know whether there was a vote or not, but the point is that there were opportunities for us to make an evaluation and contribute, and you made sure that I didn't, for instance, me personally, didn't have the opportunity to do that. So that's why I did do a thorough review of the development application, submitted it to the city planning department, and we discussed the pros and cons of the application.
So you don't recall the vote taking place?
Well, it doesn't really matter. What kind of a vote is that if you say have a show of hands?
It was a vote that really ended a dialogue that started on April 18th, 2016, up until June 21st, 2017, and there were about 10 meetings.
Councilor Mammoliti, you just asked me, how many people live in the community?
It was the vote, the final vote that
It wasn't a final vote. You asked me how many, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you asked me
can we just keep it to questions and answers and not into a
Well, I'm
debate,
attempting to
please?
answer his question.
So hang on, can Councilor Mamadidi finish?
Yes.
He wasn't finished.
So there was a process put in place of about 10 meetings. That's what I got here.
It's a little high.
Started,
Well, let him finish.
that included all of the advisory committee meetings and all the meetings with planning and the developer and the community representatives. And at the end of it all, there was a final vote where much of what you have to say was talked about. And the community voted overwhelmingly to support the 60 units.
Can I answer that? Because I think that was your question here.
That's a question.
A moment ago, you just said that there were 2,000 people in the community. There were 2,000 people in the community. And now you're saying the final decision, you were trying to imply that somehow we didn't represent the community. Now you're saying the final decision was determined by 60 people who happened to show up at the very last meeting, who undoubtedly got a little bit frustrated by how long this whole process was taking.
But you were at pretty much every meeting, weren't you?
Yes. Yep.
So you saw the negotiations unfold with the community, the planners, and the developer.
There were negotiations, yes.
And it started out with
Last question.
started out with 136 units. The community was in an uproar with respect to that, and continual dialogue took place.
Question?
Where the developer came back a number of times and ended up, after a number of meetings, agreeing with the community and settling with 60 units. You were there at all those meetings, weren't you?
There's no question about that. The thing is, though, the city staff is still saying, excuse me, I'm rather dry here, in spite of the improvements that have been made to the plan.
Yes.
You know, we commend the planners.
That was the last
However,
question.
It's dips.
there's still a refusal report.
It's dips for the most part.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The policy, yeah.
Policy.
So
That's what you're supposed to uphold. Policy.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Councilor DiCiano, hang on. There's more questions for you for Councilor DiCiano.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, I listened to your deputation for 5 minutes, and other than unsubstantiated mudslinging, you essentially reiterate what's in the report, standard language, that you don't like the features of the application. I'd like to know what you actually don't like about the application. I think everyone here would like to know what you don't like about the application.
I did submit.
What features are you concerned about?
Okay, I did submit to you. It was. I think it should be in front of you. I believe that you have the handouts, but.
Just so everybody can hear, I'll give
Yeah.
you another
Well,
5
first of all,
minutes.
number one was a public street. Is that what the city was recommending for any new street going through here? And the reason why they want a public street so it'll be wider.
Right.
Right. Okay. There'd be more turnaround space for emergency vehicles. The individual setbacks would be in compliance with city policies. Because right now, and
I'm very well aware of dips. Is there any other
okay,
issues?
well,
you
on
have?
Muir Avenue, for example, that's the street that's on the south end of the development.
Right.
On Muir, the setbacks are so close to the street that they wouldn't line up with the homes that are currently there. So a person gets in their car in their driveway and they're going to look at a wall.
Okay.
You know, so that's an issue.
Yep.
Traffic congestion, I don't think was addressed. I don't think it was really addressed adequately by the planning department either, but that's perhaps an issue for another day. Parking spaces, there were 12 parking spaces for visitors. Now that satisfies the bare minimum according to the law, or the bylaws. The parking then is going to be overflow out of the streets onto Muir and to Larchmere. There was one, and the plan has one handicapped accessible parking spot, and it was put in the most inaccessible part in the whole property, northwest corner. So, I mean, that's not even giving lip service to the handicap. Insufficient green space. You know, any kind of a development should have some space, so even just for a tiny playground for children. And there's no space for that whatsoever. There's no space for really social interaction. And they haven't wanted to get any kind of agreement with the public school system or the Catholic school system about accommodating children who are going to be living in this community.
Okay, so let's first move to your first concern. with dips. Sir, you live in a house or an apartment in the area, if I may
House.
ask? You live in a house.
Yes.
Family-size house, more than one bedroom?
Yes.
Larger than a condo unit?
Yes.
Do you think others, especially growing families, should have the same opportunity as you do to live in a house?
Absolutely.
Do you understand that many, many times, are you aware that townhouse development, this type of built form is in decline across our city? You aware of that or not?
I wouldn't say it's in decline throughout.
Are you aware,
areas,
yes
yeah.
or no?
Am I aware that it's in decline? I wouldn't say it was in decline as I drive through the city.
So it is. Now, and you're concerned about traffic, is that correct?
Yes, that Islington and Muir, the
Right.
Muir intersection.
So, are you aware that if this particular developer, and which a lot of them do, when they're not allowed to bring in private roads, there's a way to get around that policy, and that is to actually create underground parking where they can double the amount of units, and instead of having family-size units, they go more to like a condo-size unit? Are you aware of that
Yes.
way of getting around things?
Yes, that was somewhat like the original plan of 136 stacked townhouses.
Okay, so you said you had a problem with traffic.
Right.
And you want people to have an opportunity to live in family-sized houses, but you're okay with doubling the traffic and reducing the size of the
No, I
houses?
didn't say I was okay with that.
Oh.
No.
You know that that's how most property developers go about getting around some of the policies we have?
Well, that's the problem. Property developers shouldn't be getting around the policies. They should be working with the community and working with counselors. So
No, I
they don't try to
understand
get
that.
around it.
Yeah, I understand, but they are.
Well, I mean, isn't that, I understand that's your mandate here to ensure that development works for the community as best it possibly can.
So you would prefer less units than what was originally proposed? And is that what you just said?
Yeah,
Since you have a
based
traffic
on
issue?
one assumption, and that one assumption was that a vice president of the Daniels Corporation, one of the major developers in the city, has said that in 2013, he said that 14 to 18 townhouses per acre is the industry standard, 14 to 18 per acre. So that would mean on this site, that would make 43. Now, I'm not saying this should go down from 43, but I think if you could accommodate one or two less than the 60, then you'd have some room for green space.
Okay.
That'd be a major improvement.
Right, so just last question, would you rather have an apartment building there, or would you rather have homes that are ground related?
It's not zoned for apartment buildings.
That wasn't the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes. One further question? Go ahead, Councilor.
So you're representing the 75 people that belong to the ratepayer group. You have, and I've got the concerns that you have.
Yes.
The rest of the community at its meeting talked about all of these things and felt that there was good compromise with 60 units and did not want.
Not the rest of the community, sir, if I may correct you there. Your advisory group.
Let me finish asking the question. The vote was taken. They very clearly didn't want a future apartment building on the site for all the reasons we've talked about.
Right.
And they definitely don't want any more townhouses than they've agreed to with the 60. Now,
Correct.
Your objection here on behalf of 75 people could lead to an Ontario Municipal Board hearing. Do you realize that?
I am aware of that, and
Are you prepared to live with the OMB decision on more than the 60 units because the applicant can go forward with more units?
I understand that, and that's typically been with respect to any development, that the argument that you've raised in the past. Just to update everyone, as of before Christmas, it is expected that the legislation will pass in the Ontario legislature for the abandonment of the OMB, replacing it with a tribunal, whose purpose will be to ensure that all developments are consistent.
And up until that time, sir, what would happen to any appeals? It would go to the existing board, wouldn't it?
Well, that I don't know. We'll have to see what the legislation says.
Yeah, I do know.
Well, no, you don't, because it hasn't. It's not. It hasn't.
Okay, let's not get into debate. Let's answer a question and move on.
Today, it would go to the existing board. So you're prepared as the vice president of the Ratepayer Association to take the chance and go to the OMB with more units on the site at the end of the day than the 60 that are currently supported by the majority of your community?
Again, well, the last part of your argument is fallacious because the 60 is not supported necessarily by the majority of the community. I mean, you had a committee that was supposed to have been 35, and only in maximum was ever 22, and half of them were husband and wife teams. So, it really wasn't representative.
But that wasn't the question, sir, so
It's okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, Councillor Campbell?
Yes.
So you said in your deputation that you felt 60 was too many, but you said the site would be better.
Well, 60 for, not in general 60 too many, 60 too many for a 2.42 acre site.
You
2.42 acres.
You said that you,
That's not very big.
well, you said that you didn't think it necessarily had needed to go down to 43.
No,
which
no, no,
was,
no.
right, but you said it would be better served if there were one or two fewer townhouses to provide some open space.
That's right. That would just be a simple, fairly simple amendment. I mean, it's probably more complicated than I.
So sometimes these things can be negotiated too, and really what sounds like the current submission is 60. It's like 99% close to what you would like to see on
Right.
that particular site. So it doesn't sound like your objections to the 60 unit proposal are really that dire, I would say, because they're pretty close to what you think would be satisfactory. Is that a safe assumption?
Councillor Campbell, yes, it's fairly close, but again, that's why we would like to see if possible, a little more amendment, a slight revision to the plan.
Have you thought that slight revision might come out just through negotiations and talk with the developer?
That'd be wonderful if that was the case.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Giorgio.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I note there's quite a number of community consultation meetings
Yes.
in the ward. So at any time during that consultation, did your group look at possibly introducing some semi-detached homes into the
Yes, in
mix?
fact, that was the very first thing that the community wanted. That's why there was such an uproar initially, and that's what led to so many people wanting to come to our meeting, because they wanted, the community is well established and it's been detached to semi-detached. But townhouses can be part of the current zoning, as I understand it.
Assuming the townhouses might be more appropriate fronting on Islington, I guess.
Right, that's right, on a Trio Road, yes.
But in the rear, it's all a townhouse development, right?
Oh, behind it?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's detached homes. And
Oh, it
to
is detached and
detached
semi-detached.
to the west and semi-detached to the north.
Okay, so notwithstanding that the original proposal was for 136 units.
Yes.
It got dwindled down to 60 units. Your group
Right,
is
it's totally different design though.
Yeah, but notwithstanding
Yeah.
that, you're still in opposition.
Well, just we'd like to see some improvement, just a slight improvement.
Light.
Well, that would be consistent with what city staff is saying.
Slight mean, are we coming down to 55 units? Is that what you're looking at?
That would be desirable, probably, but it may not be reasonable for the proponent.
Developer. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councilors.
Our next speaker is Ryan Vertinen. Good morning, and you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of council. My name is Ryan Bertanen from KLM Planning Partners. I'm here on behalf of the applicant Calmere Developments, Inc. My client submitted the applications for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan approval in December 2015. As you heard earlier, the original applications would facilitate the construction of 136 stacked townhouse units with underground parking. Through an extensive community consultation process consisting of 9 community consultation meetings and numerous meetings with city staff, my clients arrived at the current proposal for 60 freehold townhouses and linked semi-dwellings, which through the pre-consultation meetings received strong support within the community. The proposed applications will facilitate 60 freehold communal townhouses with each unit containing a garage parking space and a driveway parking space, in addition to 12 visitor parking spaces in accordance with the City of Toronto zoning bylaw. While the proposed development does not fully conform to City of Toronto DIP standards, my client has demonstrated that the proposal will be functional from a technical perspective with respect to traffic, solid waste, and emergency services. Toronto Fire Services has confirmed that a satisfactory fire route has been provided, and a traffic study has been prepared that demonstrates the turning and maneuvering requirements for City of Toronto garbage trucks can be accommodated. The proposed private road is not 8 meters wide as required by DIPS, but it does provide the appropriate means for solid waste collection, emergency service vehicles, and vehicular circulation and parking. Blocks 7 and 8, which back onto the existing neighborhood to the west, have been designed to minimize roof massing by providing for physical separation between the pairs of units to replicate the look of semi-detached and single-detached dwelling units. This architectural treatment provides for an appropriate transition of built form to the existing residential dwellings to the west. Minimum rear yards of 7 meters are proposed along the westerly property line of the subject lands. This will provide a total building separation between existing rear yards and the proposed rear yards of approximately 30 meters. Furthermore, a significant masonry wall exists along the westerly property line that affords substantial privacy screening. It is not anticipated that the proposed reduction of the rear yard by 0.5 meters will have a noticeable or adverse impact on the adjacent lands. Block 9, which fronts onto Muir Avenue, is immediately north of a place of worship site that is designated as mixed use by the City of Toronto official plan. This designation allows for a range of low to mid-rise buildings and commercial uses. The proposed townhouse built form of Block 9 is appropriate given the current and planned land uses south of Muir Avenue and the proximity to Islington Avenue. Block 9 is not adjacent to and does not directly impact any existing residential dwellings. The proposed townhouse built form of Block 9 will provide continuation of the urban edge established by Blocks 1 and 2 that front onto Islington Avenue and frame the public frontage of the site with a consistent and attractive built form and provide appropriate transition and interface to the mixed-use designation to the south of Muir. The proposed setback along Muir Avenue provides an appropriate transition to abutting lands to the west by providing an averaging of the adjacent setbacks as per planning staff's request. Therefore, no further increase in the front yard setback was proposed. My clients worked closely with the area residents and city staff for the past 2 years to arrive at the proposed development before you today. The proposal is sensitive to the surrounding neighborhood and provides an appropriate built form transition. Furthermore, my client has demonstrated that the development will function from a traffic, solid waste, and emergency services perspective. Based on all of this, my client requests that council approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, official plan amendment, and draft plan subdivision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Mamalady?
Your initial application was 136?
Stacked
units?
townhouse units, yes.
What was the size of those units?
Substantially smaller. I think they were generally around the low, 1,200 square feet type units. The proposed units now are approximately 1,800 to high 2,000s.
How did you get there?
Like I said, through an extensive public community consultation process, 9 community meetings. We went from 136 units to 100 units to 68 units to 63 units to 60 units, and our last meetings with the community, generally I got the sense that the community was very happy with the proposal.
So, so you got there because the community got quite active and talked you through the planning department, with the planning department, and that's how you
Absolutely.
achieved your 60 units?
That's right.
Now, on your site itself, there's a road in between your site and your next door neighbor on the other side of the road, correct?
Yes, to the south?
Yeah. Would you need an official plan zoning amendment if someone were to come with your application on that site?
The lands south of Muir are designated mixed use, and that designation permits a range of low and mid-rise buildings and commercial uses, so no official plan amendment would be required.
In other words, if you came with 136 units on that side of the street, you wouldn't have to apply for rezoning, would you?
I've never looked at the total unit count that could be accommodated on that site, but generally speaking, that built form would be permitted.
And that would mean what? Would it mean a site plan application?
It'd be a site plan application and a zoning bylaw amendment.
So if an application came down tomorrow on that side, on your side of the street, 25 feet away, they would typically get approval of 136 units.
Stacked townhouse units, yes. Subject to, the appropriate setbacks and everything else.
So now you've gone through this process. It took, what, a year and a half, roughly?
Approximately 2 years almost.
And it was driven by the planning department for the most part?
Yep. We've met with planning staff many times. We've reviewed the concept, and we've adjusted the plan several times to accommodate their requests.
At the 11th hour, we saw another revisal from one of the planners that asked for a few more things, and we knew that dips would be an issue as well. So we knew it was a refusal application right from the get-go, right?
That's right.
And the initial concept of 136, how many parking spots did you have in front of each of the units you were going to build?
For 136, it was underground parking, but each unit had one parking space.
And how many parking spots does each unit have now?
There's one in the garage and one available in the driveway, so 2 for each unit plus a visitor.
Earlier we had the vice president of a ratepayer association that represents 75 people in front of us. His concern was parking. Do you think you've addressed the issues of parking? Was parking one of the bigger issues that the community had, meaning they didn't want anybody on the streets parking?
That's right. One of our concepts had an 8-meter road, which is the DIP standard. That road right of way was reduced so we could accommodate additional parking in the driveway to accommodate the residents' concerns. And the proposed parking now also conforms with the Toronto requirements.
You also pick up the garbage, so the city won't have to pick up the garbage with this proposal, right?
That's correct.
And if that particular group, the 75 people, get their way, you would see a road running through there, larger, with typically, what, 1 parking spot in front of the unit, 2 parking spots?
It'd be difficult to say in terms of what it would accommodate, in terms of it to be an 18-meter wide right-of-way likely. So that would certainly impact the whole development layout of the site. So it'd be hard to say what we could accommodate.
There's been some tweaking at the last minute after the negotiations had taken place between the community and yourself through the planners. Are you happy with the suggestions that have come forward, or are you going to tweak this thing?
No, we're not happy with some of the components of the staff's recommendation, particularly in terms of the transition and built form. We feel that we've addressed those concerns appropriately. Like I said, we recognize that we don't conform with DIPS, and that was always the intent for this project. But in terms of transition and setbacks, we feel that we've addressed staff's concerns appropriately.
Last questions?
That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell?
So the deputy representing a number of residents said that, 60 was a good move. He wishes there were fewer townhouses just to free up a little bit of space. Would you be willing to entertain discussions with the community to make some changes to the design that's in place now?
Well, frankly, that'd be my client's decision to make, but I believe that he's had extensive discussions with city staff and the residents, and I think he believes this plan is appropriate the way it is.
Okay, but you can't say for certain he might be willing to...
I don't believe that he would be inclined to do so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
No problem.
Our next deputant is Umberto Di Francesco. Good morning.
Morning to everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Umberto Di Francesco. I live at 6 Valley Hill. It's just south of west of the Islington. So I've been living there 7 years because I built my own home there. I used to live at Grampian Crescent. It's north of the Finch, since the 78. So I belong to the community since George came in the politics. I was with the Lambrinos before, but then I come with George. What we did about 4 or 5, 6 meeting the community, and we have about 2 or 3 general meeting on San Roque. And when we was on San Roque, the community was there, and they asked a question. Georgie answered the question. We answered the question. Because we went through with this builder, it's like, excuse me my word, like when you milk the cow. So the cow have so much milk, and you can milk it, eh? And milk, and you milk, and you milk. Every time there was a tough talk from the community, from George, and sometimes even from the builder. So we bring this guy after so many meetings for the community, then we bring him to the general meeting, and we hear the response, and then we have more meeting, you know, with the community. And first thing I want to say to that gentleman, he spoke, not the one who spoke now, but the one before, he said, he make up this community. I am with the George, and there's people there, they was with George, and there was people passed away, they was with the George. So you don't come there and say this meeting, this community was just to make up now. No, because I live in the area since 78. And I was in the community since 78. Eh? So when we bring it up to the people on a general meeting, the people they have is complain, and we bring to the with the community meeting, and we talking about that, and we milk more of the cow, and we milk and we milk and we milk, and we bring them down to 60. Eh? That night we have the last meeting to 60. Eh? I told the people, I say, you guys better understand, because of that guy there, eh? He came with a plan, 136 stock home. He still have it. If we don't accept this, because it's no more milk, it's no more milk. Don't come with 2 hours or 1 hour and this and that. That's bull. You're supposed to be on a meeting and talk about that. Like I've been on Rock, eh? At San Gaspar, on the same time, and we don't even have an air condition there. Eh? So we reach the 60. I think the community, we have a vote. If we have voted for the 60, we present to the public on San Roque, and they accept too. Eh? So we thought was everything nice and planned, because that's how much we work hard for that. We work real hard, because I built my home there 7 years ago. It's a nice home, and it was everything quiet. So I don't, you know, even the stock home, it's okay, but don't make them so small, because the community there, they got a good home. You know, if you look at Annox, you know, they got good homes there. Now they built a nice home, detached home there, and that's a beautiful home. So you come with that. I don't got nothing wrong with that. But if we can milk a little bit, and we come down to 60, I think that's a good deal. Good deal. That's enough. You know, we don't start the politics. Please, please. This guy is supposed, excuse me,
Yeah.
Vince Grisant. This guy supposed to be there when we sweat at San Gaspar. We have one fan. We keep on share with the lady. Eh? You get a little bit, we get a little bit. And we was talking there about this thing to come down. Now for the transportation, we have to talk with these people in transportation and see what they can do on Muir and the light there, because we have a problem there. But we have to, that's a different deal. So, you know, to tell me you just make up this community, you offend me.
Okay.
Because I work so hard. All of the community work hard. And the people there, they're all concerned about that.
Thank you very
Thank-
much. Very
thank
well
you.
said.
Thank you to everybody.
1 minute. Let's see
Yeah.
if there's any questions for you first. Any questions?
Oh, yes.
Councilor Mamalidi?
So initially, there were 136 units at about 1,200 square feet.
Yes.
What was the initial response by the much larger community when they found out that it was 136 at about 1,200 square feet?
We just say, you know what, forget about it. Let's go home, because I better go to the club and go play cards, because there's no use to discuss for this. So you told me, say, you come back with a better deal, and they come down. So we refuse them again. We refuse them again. So you come back again, you have a better deal. You have a better deal. But then, after all of the sweat, all the talk the community have, the community, we come down to 60. And we was so satisfied with that. And that's what we did to the vote. And everybody agreed. So we present to the public.
So they weren't happy with the square footage of the properties. They wanted it bigger. Was there anything else? Was the parking on the properties was one of those issues? They wanted 2 parking spots in front of each unit and not one. Is that? This is the first meeting, right? When you first heard about the 136.
Yes, George. You know, you know, you know, we have a bunch people, and sometimes these people, one people think one way, the other people think the other way. But if you start talk with them, you know, like at a community, and you talk with them, they say, oh, yeah, you're right. You know, it's better to have this detached home, you know, semi-detached home, they have a stock home. So, hey, go ahead. So that's why, you know,
so now you have some members of the community who was represented by one person here today that don't want this thing approved, right?
Yeah.
You're aware that if it's not approved and that the developer does have the ability to go to the Ontario Municipal Board. We've talked about that in the community, have we not?
We talked so many times.
And what was the outcome of those discussions? Does the community want it to go to the OMB? Or
No.
would they rather resolve the issue?
No. We have to solve it. That's why we keep and tell you the force of the builder to come to the meeting to present better deal. We try to get it. And we try to get it. So we did it for so many times.
What would you say to this ratepayer group that now is suggesting to end the discussions, to move forward with a rejection, and to risk the 136 units brought back by the Ontario Municipal Board on that site? What would you say to those 75 people that seem to be saying that's what they're gonna take a chance on?
You really want my idea?
I want everyone here to know.
I better
meeting,
not say,
so-
George, because you know, I think these people don't even have an idea what's really going on. They just talk. They just talk. Politics. I wish I can give to someone these people, because there was one guy behind on the west side there where they're going to build this place. His name is Natal. He did the plaster in my home, in my new home. So I talked with the guy. I said, Natal, why you not come to the meeting? Oh, no, I don't have to come to the meeting. I said, but you got a house right behind there on the west side. I mean, you got a beautiful house, eh? Oh, you say, no worry about it for me, because the builder, every valuation I'm going to lose on my home, they have to give me the money. I said, Natal, I think you're on the wrong track. You have to talk. You know, just to say, oh, the lawyer he told me if you lose $100,000, the builder have to pay you. I said, that's another way to go to the business
The last
today.
question. I'm trying to get out through the questioning, how many people came to the meeting, what was discussed? Would it be safe to say that a few hundred people came to the meetings over the last year and a half or so?
Oh, yes. You know, when we have the general meeting there on Sun Rock, we bring, you know, what we exceed. There was about 300 people.
At the last meeting or the first meeting?
No, and the last meeting, there was about 300 people. So that's when we present what we accomplished.
And do you recall the vote that was taken with those 300 people or so?
The people was fine to vote.
Do you remember what the vote was?
No, I don't remember, but there was a high percent, yes.
But they were asked whether or not they want the 60.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you recall that it was the planning department that chaired that meeting, was it not?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And they asked that vote, and what did the 300 people, the majority of them, say?
But I think 200 people, they vote yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions for the deputy? Thank you very much, sir. Grazie. And next, Speaker is Julian Tetone. Good morning.
Morning.
Go ahead, Julian.
I'm just here to say on behalf, we, as a advisory group and as the member of the community that we live in, that we have no objection to the 60 units. Everybody seems pleased with what the outcome of them are, and basically, we think that it's the best proposal that there is.
Good, thank you. Any questions of the deputy? Councilor Mamalidi.
You were one of the gentlemen that signed up to the request for an advisory committee?
Yes, I was.
There was about 35 people that signed up?
Correct, yes.
The intention of that 35 people, was it to make the ultimate decision, or was it to share your opinions with the...
Share our opinions with the surrounding committee, community.
And did you do that?
Yes, we did.
And what did the community do at that point after you shared your views?
They shared their views, and I believe that we all agreed on the 60 units that's been, that we are addressed with today.
So at the beginning of the process, it was 136 units. The community went a little crazy.
Yes.
I didn't support it, obviously.
Correct.
And just for the sake of, because one of the deputies made some concern about the advisory committee. So the advisory committee was struck.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that that was a good process that the planning department
I believe it was,
put
yes.
together? And did you feel that you had enough input to go back to the community after all the dialogue was?
Yes, we did.
And how many times did the developer actually come back to you after the advisory committee said, we don't like this plan? How many times did that happen?
I'm guessing 4 or 5 times with the improvements.
It wasn't something that lasted a month.
No, this was almost a year and a half.
Are you happy with the group of people that seem to want smaller units on the site?
No.
Right now?
I don't like the smaller
Do they
units.
represent your voice?
No.
And are you happy with the fact that it would be a larger road there that would be constructed if they got their way?
I don't see the need for the larger road if the builder is doing what he says he was going to do, and he was going to take care of all the services going through.
And are you aware that if they get their way and council rejects this application, that it could very well end up at the board? We talked about that as a community.
We talked about it, and yes, I am aware of
Does the
it.
community want that to go to the board?
I don't think that they do.
And if they get the 136 units at the board, what do you think the community is going to do or say?
It's going to be an uproar in the community once again.
And so it would be led by a group of people that seem to want that.
It seems that way.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks. Thank you. So our next deputant is Anastasia Kothathanis. I'm not sure I said that right. Anastasia? Good morning.
Good morning.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you for letting me speak. I am a resident. The property that where I reside backs onto this development site on the north side, and it's in the semi-detached area of the community. So I am here today because although I did for this development attend all of the meetings that both Councillor Mamalidi called and offered, and later on, when it seemed like some community members wanted to form a residents association, I tried to attend all of those as well. The association was formed after some of the meetings had taken place about this development, and at one of the meetings they needed a secretary. I take very good notes. I didn't have a problem with that. I believe that the community had been lacking for many years a residents association, and I have heard from just other friends and colleagues that live in different areas that they can have an impact, more of a say, as they say. So that is why I decided to take that job. So I initially got involved in attending all the meetings because my family would be directly impacted by this development. the very first meeting that we did have by, called by our counselor, had a big turnout. I think partly due to the flyers that went out from the city, but also because some residents got involved and made sure that they made more community members aware. And I know that originally there was a very big, strong feeling with most of the community for similar type of housing that exists there in that area right now, which is singles or semis. The message from quite early on, or at least many of our interpretations of the message, was that that would be too much to ask for. And, we'd have to settle for some kind of a townhouse development. And so, of course, when myself, my family, my direct neighbors, other people heard this, we wanted to be more involved and make sure that we worked with whoever we needed to work with to make it in keeping with what's best for the community and not totally drastically different from what exists there today. My main concern after having seen the refusal report is that although the builder owner did make several revisions in order to try to create a townhouse development that would be better suited for the area, my family and I were quite, still have strong concerns that there are certain areas of the application that don't meet with the city planner, and it seemed to us to be, a strong refusal of it. So we have faith in city planners and other government officials that there's a procedure in place, there are rules in place to make sure that the community is what's protected, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's in the best interest of community. So I don't feel that, I know my family and many people that I've talked to aren't necessarily opposed to a luxury townhouse development, but we would like to see, however many changes take place so that the city officials that do this for a living, and I believe do a good job, can approve it and not refuse it. As for in terms of votes, the last full community meeting that we had in terms of people finding out about this last revision with the 60 townhouses, I believe it was a very hot summer evening. We had it at a location that did not have air conditioning. I know that not nearly as many people showed up as to the original full community meeting at the library that when the process began. Many people did leave partway through, understandably. Many of the residents are, even if they're not seniors or older, the heat that day was quite unbearable. So I was also a little worried about the way the way this vote kind of, to me, it wasn't a vote. People were asked, a few hands went up, many people didn't say anything. So I was also concerned about, it wasn't like a vote like I'm used to a vote where raise your hands, count how many, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant, Councillor Mamalidi?
And I want to thank you for all of the work that you've done in the community with the advisory committee, and even with the rapier group. I do want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
But I just want you to. This is one of my concerns. I'm going to ask you through a question. Okay, we went through this big dialogue. The process lasted a year and a half. Would you agree that it ended up being a lot better than the original 136 units proposed?
I do agree, and that's why I'm wondering, like, if it still doesn't meet all of the things that the city would deem it a good product. I guess not just dips, everything, that was mentioned.
Well, there's only a couple other items outside of dips. I think
I would like that to be
on one of the roof, and we call it tweaking. So there's a couple of other items, yes, but dips is the major one. And we knew from the onset that that the staff would reject the application because of dips. You remember that
Yeah, and
conversations? Okay.
and that in itself, the dips issue, I'm not an expert on it, but I foresee streets not being as wide, services not provided by the city. There are properties that back onto it and are at a lower elevation, like.
So you'll recall,
Mhm.
I hope you recall, that discussion had taken place. Do we want the much larger road? And if that were the case, the developer would have moved forward with the stacked towns.
I don't know if that was made clear that they would have moved forward with that.
Well,
I know that was the fear with many of the residents, both in the big group and in the working committee.
So the larger roads would have created stacked townhouses on both sides, right? Smaller units, and one car per townhouse. Do you recall that?
That was one of the options that we were told the developer might move ahead with.
Do you get that that's one of my major concerns here? Because
Yes,
the group you belong to, the ratepayer group, is asking for that now.
Well,
And
I believe the ratepayers group, and at least I, as a resident directly connected to this property, is asking for some kind of a development, townhouse development, that makes allowances for these things that aren't being amended, like so that the planners can approve it. That's what we're wanting.
They're going back to the concept of larger roads. And what that's going to bring to the community is stacked towns with less parking.
Well, I don't know if that's known for certain. I certainly hope not.
We had that dialogue, right? And if they get their way, we're going to go back again, probably to the OMB at this point. And you, as one of the neighbors, could end up with a ruling of the OMB that could have a lot more stacked townhouses than currently at the 60. As a neighbor, are you happy taking that chance right now?
All I know is that the application had been improved or amended so that it obviously was significantly better than what was originally presented to the community. But again, my hope is that they are able to amend it further, because if it does comply with the certain issues that the planners are having, I think everybody would be in support of it, not just some.
Developer just told us no. So what that means is it's going to the OMB. And if this is rejected, and if that's the case, as one of the neighbors, are you happy taking the chance that you could end up with 136 units in your backyard of stacked townhouses?
Well, I would hope that won't take place, but if it means, standing up for what's right and hoping that people will follow rules and guidelines that have put in place to protect communities, then.
You're the secretary of the organization.
Yes.
Sent us a letter suggesting that we refuse the application. You belong to it.
Based on the fact that I don't feel comfortable supporting it, if the city planning department feels it needs to be refused.
Okay, but you belong to this organization. This organization has taken the position that they want it refused. The developer's saying it's going to the OMB if it's refused. As a neighbor, forget your involvement as the community. Are you happy with taking that chance?
Well, as a neighbor, I did have concerns, even in some of the meetings that we had, that the city planner had some concerns with the application as it was. So that's why, not just as a residents association member.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Any other speakers? That's all I had on the list. If you could state are you speaking, sir?
Yes, sir, I am.
If you could just state your name and.
My name is Gino Novia. I'm on the advisory committee, and I was part of the process that lasted over a year and a half. And, every meeting we had with the builder, we took all that information to meetings with the general public, and we had on average 200 to 300 people at these meetings. Me as part of the advisory committee, we were up at the front of the room. We were pointed at, people were asking us these hard questions, and they made good sense. We started at 136, we brought it down to 60, and by the end of it, in my opinion, the committee seemed quite content with what the builder had proposed to us. Why there isn't bulldozers on that site right now leveling it and building, I have no idea. I read the paper this morning, I see a site in the city museum flights has been canceled by the builder. People have lost all their dreams and hopes. I'm not here supporting the people that bought properties, but I'm encouraging the city to give this builder the approval, because as part of the advisory committee, we did it very democratically. We brought all this information to the community, not just a fraction of the community. I'm not part of the Ratepayers Association. I respect their opinions, but the general population of the community has all agreed on 60 townhouses. Councilors, I ask you, please, can we move forward with this?
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor DiGiorgio.
Have you given any consideration to the fact that there are some people opposed to the application, that in fact, if this community council were to approve the application, it might still be under appeal to the OMB?
I have, absolutely. But I've also considered what may be a result if we don't move forward with what we've got in front of us now. And I would rather have something there that is better suited for the community, as opposed to, no word of a lie, gentlemen. Last night on my way home, I worked till 11 at night. When I was driving along Islington, there was a forensics truck at the end of the street. There's a small townhouse complex across the street already, and they were photoing a body on the ground. Now, a stacked condo unit, in my opinion, might only encourage this kind of rental units and just bring more of this to the community. What we're trying to do is better the community. We're not trying to go backwards, but it seems like we're going backwards here. We need to move forward. That's all I'm saying. I went through all these meetings. I volunteered a lot of my time. You know, I don't understand why we even have to go through this. I just want to see this thing start. I want to see it developed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that it, Councillor? That's it? Councillor Mamalidi? Go ahead.
Gino, thank you very much for being a part of all of it as well. I appreciate it, as I appreciate all the people that have taken their time out to do it. There's one point of this that didn't come out yet, and I'm doing it through questions because I only have 5 minutes to speak later, but it wasn't just this site we were concerned about during the deliberations when we spoke with ourselves. Whatever happens on this site could potentially happen along Islington Avenue. Is that not a precedent that we had talked about?
Yes, we did. We covered all the issues regarding Islington Avenue and the development. And, you know, I thought the builder was very accommodating, you know, making the accommodations he did and what he wanted to do. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to see more of what we have there. I want to try and get rid of what, you know, is creating all that havoc in the area and start, you know, bringing, you know, better people into the area.
So in developing this site with larger units,
yes,
the townhomes there are going to be sold for about 800,000 to $1 million. Was that what we heard?
Yeah, I would think, yeah, easily.
And prior to them increasing the square footage of them, the stacked towns were going to be sold at about 500.
400 to 500. It's a potential investment for someone just to buy, just to rent it out. And you know,
so
personally,
so the community felt they wanted larger units. That there's with the townhouses next door or across the street, and the rental units above the stores, and that the community wanted more larger sales units.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was talked about, right? That was one of the reasons we want a larger unit.
Families into the community, yes, absolutely.
And if we didn't get that at this corner, didn't the community say if we don't get it at this corner, we're probably going to end up with smaller units all along Islington Avenue now? That they needed a precedent for at least the local council to work with along Islington Avenue.
Yes, we discussed all these issues, and you know, where we are now, I thought we were in stone. I thought we were moving forward with this. That's why I'm surprised, you know, that we're still bouncing this back and forth. The last meeting we had, there was 300 people there plus, and we all agreed to move forward with you know, what the builder had proposed.
Was it a very clear vote? Because I heard
it was for me, but and I don't mean to be biased or anything. I was on the advisory committee, and all the information that was provided to us, we shared with the community.
Are you satisfied with the way
I am
the city?
absolutely satisfied.
Are you satisfied with the way the city ran its consultation processes?
I am. They came up, they showed us information on the impact that the site would have. And I was, you know, I had a little concerns maybe with the width of the street at Muir and Islington. But when I look at it, I'm sure they could accommodate a left lane there now. You know, for me, it's not an issue.
Okay. At the beginning of this process, you were one of the more angrier residents. Is that safe to say?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't, you know, I didn't want to see something
Are you as
put
angry
there.
are you as angry now that we've gone
Absolutely. I'm angry that, you know, there aren't, you know, machines on there leveling that property and
Different anger
building.
now. Okay.
I want to see this done. I don't want to keep driving by this fence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Very much, councilors.
thank you so much for coming out. And any other speakers while we're on this before we go to questions of staff? There be no other speakers. Now questions of staff, I gather, correct? All right. Do you want to go first, Councillor?
Yeah, I do actually. Phil, thank you for all your work. It's clear that it was a lengthy process, right?
It was comprehensive.
For the most part, the planning department drove the process?
We had an extensive consultation process. It's documented in the report, and thoroughly enjoyed working with your constituents.
And the advisory committee that was struck, that was something that is typical of these kinds of application, where you get a smaller group of the residents who want to talk informally about all the issues and then report back to the much larger community?
It's useful to have a subset of the community filter information through to the broader community. In this particular case, by the time the file came to me, the group was already set up.
Do you think that the outcome of 60 units would have been achieved if we kept negotiating with 300 people?
The negotiations were with staff. What happened with
I get that, but I mean a community consultation negotiations.
I think that the process was positive in the sense that the proponent listened to the community, listened to staff. A significant amount of change was made.
Do you believe that given the anger that was in the community, we would have achieved the same outcome if we would have kept the dialogue with 300 people as opposed to 35?
I don't know if the outcome would have changed or not, but it would have been more difficult.
Okay. So given that, are you satisfied that we had enough consultation on this?
There was an extensive amount of consultation.
And the community knew that dips would be an issue that staff were always uncomfortable with.
We identified the dips issue up front.
Okay.
We informed the community what that entailed. We asked the developer to conform with council's policy for public roads, and he declined.
And it's clear that if that would have continued, we would not have reached the deal if we didn't pursue the 2 parking spots, for instance, in front of each unit, the larger units, the smaller roads, the garbage pickup, all of the things that play a part in all of this would not have been achieved, that it would have gone to the OMB sooner?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that there was a balance between that, with the proponents calling that extra parking space, which we don't identify as a parking space. The on-site parking space is in the garage.
Right.
The driveway leading to it doesn't count. It is
There's enough room for another car.
There is for convenience parking. But the trade-off, the balance that was trying to be reached was that parking space versus a sidewalk, green space, and some of the matters that we would look for in DIPS.
And resolving that issue would resolve a much larger issue with people parking on the road, wouldn't it? Like
Again, we were trying to balance the community concern with off-site parking. The idea was that the amount of development that was being proposed would generate a lot of visitors, and that would infiltrate into the community.
So, on this site, it's one zoning. We got to go for rezoning for this particular application. And an official plan amendment. 25 feet away on the other side, is it the same scenario?
Muir, being the local road, is the hard edge. It's the divider between the mixed-use areas, which is the commercial node for the community, mixed use, and to the north, it's all neighborhoods designation.
Okay, so to the south, 25 feet away, what's the zoning?
It's mixed use.
And what would that allow?
It would allow, well, there's a recent development, as you're aware, of stacked townhouses further into that mixed-use area.
So you wouldn't have to go for an official plan amendment 25 feet away?
For stacked towns or for townhouses? For stacked towns, no. You would just do a rezoning.
So it's the road and the designation on each side to determine what can be built. But 25 feet away, stacked towns would be permitted without an official plan amendment.
So the official plan, which is council's policy for guiding growth, designates the subject property neighborhoods, which is stable, not static. Okay. To the south of Muir is mixed use, where we anticipate and encourage some form of change occurring over time.
The answer to the question is yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we wouldn't have had to go through this big process that we've gone through on rezoning 25 feet away.
But Muir is the line. That's.
Yeah, I know you're thinking like a planner, but realistically. I get. I feel like, I love you. I don't want to challenge you. So DIPS is something that's been overturned, that policy, for some applications continually over the City of Toronto, right? Council has said, well, planners have had issues on DIPS. Council has said, well, in this particular case, it's a little different. We would change our position on DIPS for this particular application. That's been done before. By council.
I'm aware of a couple of occasions, but it's still staff's responsibility to adhere to council's policy.
And you made that clear right from the get-go, no question, but it's been done before.
Yes.
Okay. And if this goes to the Ontario Municipal Board, with the 60 units, would they be looking at making some kind of ruling on DIPS?
I don't know what they would do. I know that we would be there supporting council's policy.
Right, and we've done that before in the past, have we not, at OMB?
We have.
And we've lost a few times?
We've won a few too.
So if, and I know it's all ifs, right, but that's where we're faced with right now, right, is taking that chance. The applicant does have the right to go back with any one of its other proposals to the city, right, to the Ontario Municipal Board.
I'm going to defer to the city solicitor on Planning Act matters.
Question I wasn't focused on.
So I know the answer to the question, but I need to ask it because people are watching, and so there's community people at home that couldn't come today. They're watching the proceedings, so through their live stream or the way they do it. If this is appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board, does the owner of this site have the right to bring back any of its previous applications to council?
Well, it has the right to take, as I understand it, they have the right to take their current application. If they have revised it and said, this is my new application, then they can't, the hearings are set up, they can't go back and say, I'm going back to what I was 2 years ago. But if they've put this forward as a settlement and a resolution, but they still have their original application on file, then certainly they could go back to their original application that they
Just
made.
answer one more question. The OMB structure is still there, right? Anybody has the right to appeal goes to the current OMB chair, or do we have to wait for the provincial statute to change?
No, the appeals of a zoning bylaw would go to the
Existing,
yeah, the Ontario Municipal Board. That has
not any municipal committee or board. It goes to the existing Ontario Municipal Board.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor DiCiano?
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully I'll be very quick. The original application that had 130 some odd stacked units, was it above ground parking or below grade?
It was below grade.
It was below grade. So were the roads within the 130 plan, were they public or private?
They were private.
They were private roads. So you had 130 some odd units with private roads, and that would have been okay, is that correct?
Because the below grade parking encroached under the roads, we wouldn't accept them as private.
Okay, so, but now, with half the amount of units, our policy is we need bigger roads. So much less cars. When you had 130 units, we were okay with private roads, but now that there's half the units, we're not okay with private roads.
For 136 stacked townhouse units plus the visitor requirements, the only way to accommodate that many parking spaces on slightly over 2 acres is to go below grade. Here you have grade-related townhouses, each with its own integral garage.
Understood. Yeah. But there's half the amount of units right now, and with 134 units or 133 units, we were okay with smaller roads.
They were private because of the underground parking. DIPS did not apply.
Right, and now with ground-related, you can fit 2 cars comfortably on each property.
The zoning bylaw requirement for parking is met, plus convenience parking in front of each townhouse.
Okay. And in the former application, how was garbage collected with the private roads? Was it?
Private.
It was private pickup. And now it would be private or public pickup?
The proponent's still proposing to have private pickup.
Private pickup. Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Campbell?
So what does DIPS stand for?
Development infrastructure.
Oh, good.
You know,
Somebody, come on, somebody has to know. It's an acronym in the,
Communists? Socialists?
policy standards.
Oh, sorry, that's Dipper.
policy standards, though, okay. So could this development have met the DIPS, the policy standard, with the original proposal?
With the original, no.
It couldn't, under no circumstances it could have.
The stacked townhouse blocks
Right.
Were taking up a significant amount of coverage.
Right.
It would have been
Not possible.
No.
Not physically possible in this space. Okay. So the opening line of the comments is kind of interesting. It says, the development proposal has been significantly amended from the initial submission made in December 2015 as a result of staff concerns and significant community consultation and involvement. So what staff concerns were specifically addressed by the applicant?
The typology.
And would you say most were?
I think the threshold one, the biggest one that we had was the typology. Aside from the stacked townhouses that were recently developed in the mixed-use areas where they're permitted, there was no other form of that development in the neighborhood around. Townhouses, we've done a review of development along Islington from Steeles to Finch. It's in the staff report. There are current existing examples of grade-related townhouses in the neighborhood, on the periphery of the neighborhoods.
Has the circus arrived?
So the major one was the height, originally at 4 stories,
Right.
the typology being stacked townhouses as opposed to grade-related. The the proposal was completely redone to bring it down to a building form that is currently existing in the broader surrounding neighborhood.
So would you say this is a much more livable development than it was on the original proposal?
I think all developments, when they come forward, that's one of the primary tests is to be livable. But in terms of more in tune with the physical character of the area, grade-related townhouses, we concluded that they're acceptable.
In terms of some of the technical objections, on page 12 of the report, it says the proposed front yard setbacks are 2 meters, 4.65, and 6.2 meters. The adjacent property on Muir Avenue has a setback of 10 meters, but isn't it, I mean, in a lot of townhouse developments, if you're in the city of Toronto, and in certain parts of, you know, even suburbia, setbacks aren't that substantial. In fact, I can think in my own ward on, you know, Royal York and Ashley Park, their setbacks are not 10 meters. I mean, so, I mean, how egregious is that in terms of a technical problem?
So it's not so much the purpose of the setback, it's the transition from the corner block on Islington and Muir, which has a side onto Muir, which is, it's close. The idea would be to transition the first block of townhouses fronting onto Muir so that you create a gradual transition, because the first dwelling in is a detached dwelling with a garage and driveway. So you're probably right, 10 meters is more than we would expect today. But they still would require a front yard setback to have a parking space in front of the garage. The next block over is the one that backs onto the detached house and flanks onto Muir. The idea would be to transition between the block fronting Muir, the flanking side, and then to establish an appropriate setback regime leading into the neighborhood. Once you get into the detached dwellings, they're all consistent.
So then, I mean, there's others, I guess another, just below that, the front yard setbacks vary from 5.65 to, you know, 5.67. Only one is a setback of 6 meters. I guess you were looking for, in some cases, 6-meter setbacks, and they're out by 50 centimeters or so.
Well, the guidelines that were noted in that table identify little matters and some significant matters. But they're the tests that we use to implement the official plan goals and objectives of that compatibility and transition. So what the councillor was saying earlier about the 3 significant matters, the transition for that block fronting on Muir is one, the transition in height for the 2 blocks backing onto the neighborhoods is 2, and then some of the other matters, including typology fronting onto Muir for that 1 block as well.
Could, in your professional opinion, could changes be made to satisfy these technical requirements and still have 60 units?
Last question.
That was my last question anyway.
Great. Good timing.
We're on tap.
Go ahead.
I think that I don't want to say that we can achieve 60. I think that the design suggestions made by city planning staff are achievable to result in an appropriate development of the lands that would be close to the 60.
Thanks for the answers.
Before we go to the other, it's approaching 12:30, so we need to decide. So I want to see the will of the committee. If we can wrap this up relatively quickly, we could extend and complete, or break for lunch and come back. So, yes, what? Complete? Well, why don't we vote on it? Then we don't. So all in favor of completing the item? Well, we have speakers, and then we have more questions, and then we have speakers. So that it could take another half an hour. And then there's another round. That's just this item. Yeah, we should break. All right, so then why don't we do that? Thank you very much. What we're going to do, it's 12:30. We'll break for lunch. We're going to resume at 1:30, and we'll see everybody back here. Thank you very much.